Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you. Bulletins on GB News,
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From cold mornings
To warm family brunches.
from football to tennis in the car,
In the kitchen.
GB News breakfast is there.
With the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
we're here again.
To start your day just right. GB News breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think GB News is completely unique in the way that we interact with our viewers.
Our audience aren't afraid to have their say. They want their voices heard now, and they've got a channel where that can happen.
I find more and more as I'm wandering around, people come up to me and they say, "We saw you on television." I say, "Oh yes, on what?" "On GB News."
Hello, are you the famous Sue? The whole crew hid me here now. We came to celebrate.
It's our job to be the eyes and ears of the viewers.
They are part of the GB News family, and I'm pleased to say it's a very large family.
And if people go to the time and trouble of listening and watching, then we've got to do a good job for them.
Well, I'm here, right in the epicentre of the protest.
Here we go again.
You just tuned in. Where have you been?
It is raucous here tonight.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
Very good evening, good morning, live from Washington DC. This is The Late Show on GB News with Bev Turner and the stories shaping Britain and America. The King has just touched down in Washington DC and was greeted by the President. They've just been having afternoon tea. Now, GB News has been leading the coverage all day with royal correspondent Cameron Walker and fellow Late Show live presenter Ben Leo at the White House there, gentlemen. Not as many people there, a lot of the press have gone, but reflections on the day so far, the pair of you, Ben.
Yes, good evening, Bev. Good morning, rather. A historic day. The cavalry have arrived. President Trump needs to be on his best behaviour, it's been argued, whilst the King and Queen come over here to try and smooth over that special relationship.
Yeah, and I think the President was beaming when the King and Queen arrived here at the White House. We'll be discussing all of that, and I've got a bit of a sneak peek as to what the King will be saying in his speech to Congress tomorrow, so stay tuned.
OK, a lot to get through. Let's get started. We've got a long 3 hours ahead of us. This is The Late Show Live. I'm Bev Turner. So this was the moment that King Charles and Queen Camilla arrived at the White House this afternoon for the start of their 4-day state visit. They were greeted by President Trump in the beautiful sunshine today. It was about 24 degrees out there. First Lady Melania, of course, little hello kisses there. They are now hosting a private tea as well as a garden party. We're looking at the pictures here from the tea because the press weren't allowed into this. Now, with President Trump, you get a huge amount of access, of course. He is very welcome to enter the room with a press all assembled. Bit different when King Charles is in town, frankly. So all there were within this private meeting were some still photographers. Now, in the last few moments, they walked on the South Lawn. They went to see the new beehive in the White House garden. We're looking at the footage here. So this was a couple of hours ago now. This isn't the last few moments. This was a little earlier this afternoon. Melania is apparently, here we go, this is it. This is the beehive. It's shaped like the White House. And this is the king, no doubt, talking about bees. I think it's fair to say, we can't lip read, but it's fair to say from the hand movements. Now, of course, we know that the king is also a keen beekeeper as well. And this is the ambassador. This is Christian Turner. So Christian Turner and his wife, Claire. Now, these are the pictures. We're seeing Nancy Pelosi there. These are the images from the ambassador's residence this afternoon. So there were various members of the media. Not all the media invited today, but we might come on to that in just a moment. But there were a lot of dignitaries, a lot of American politicians, a lot of people there to say hello to the King and Queen. I'm just seeing these images for the first time. They are very hot off the press. That is Caitlin Collins there from CNN news anchor. That's Stephen Miller, one of President Trump's key advisors to the right of this Republican Party, no doubt about it. We asked my panel, who's that, Niall Gardner?
I'm not sure who that is.
Laurie Watkins, any idea who these people are?
I did not recognise that last woman, no.
No, we don't. We aren't familiar with all of these people. There were about 600 there. Between us, we'd be doing well if we knew all 600.
But it was interesting, the Stephen Miller photo with him. You could tell the king had a cocktail in his hand.
Well, it will have been a very convivial afternoon. We'll be finding out a little bit of detail actually about what they were drinking, what they were eating there today. And the ambassador's residence is quite beautiful, let me tell you. Niall Gardner, you've been there before. I've been there. Yeah. Fortunate enough to have been there a few times. Yeah, my guests are here. I should introduce them really. Niall Gardner's here, Laurie Watkins is here. Yes. It's a different sort of show this evening. We're going to be going to Ben and Cameron in just a moment. But what would the atmosphere have been like at the garden party this afternoon?
Well, it's a spectacularly beautiful day here in Washington.
It is.
And a stunningly nice day. And the ambassador's residence is probably the most spectacular ambassador's residence in Washington, the British ambassador's residence, and this would have been a magnificent party in many respects. And
now, why do you think some members of the media were invited to this, but not GB News, funnily enough, and not you on this occasion now? Yes. You and I would normally be on the guest list. Why not today? I think that might be.
I'd imagine that some prominent critics of Keir Starmer and the present British government, I might add, were not included probably on the guest list. And,
well, Yvette Cooper was there as well today.
Yeah, and we've both been very critical, I would say, of many aspects of the Labour government's policies. So that may have had a factor actually in the guest decision making.
Because of course, even though King Charles will tell us that he is apolitical, he is also representing the government whilst he's here, isn't he? And so there is no doubt that he's making this speech tomorrow, Laurie, at Congress. And there is no doubt that the...
You all are not invited to that either?
We're not. No. I will be there, actually. I will be there for GBNews. But I think it's fair to say that number 10 will have gone through that speech with a fine-tooth comb to check for any particular political landmines which might explode tomorrow.
Sure. Absolutely. But I would also say that that's a signal when they're the ones that are approving the guest list, as Niall said, and they didn't. Sorry, GB News, you heard it here first. I mean, you should write in, right, and complain.
Yeah.
Tell the king your business.
Yeah. Let's go to Ben and Cameron now at the White House for their reflections on the day so far. It's only the start, guys, of the royal celebration that is this week. There's no doubt it's to some extent a celebration of the relationship between these two men. Not you two men, not these two men, just to be clear. The main two men of the evening being President Trump and the King.
Yeah.
Ooh,
awkward.
There we go.
Special relationship.
You first, sweetheart. After you.
Yeah. It's been a long afternoon, hasn't it? And Ben. Yes, the King and President Trump. I think it has been a long day, Bev. President Trump, and we were saying this earlier, weren't we? He was just so in awe of the King and Queen being here on the South Portico of the White House. You've seen him, Bev, with several world leaders before. He always seems quite macho. He always seems like the top dog in the room. But there was a mutual respect, I think, between President Trump and the King when he arrived here at the White House. The tea that took place in the green room just to our right lasted for about double the time it was meant to. It was scheduled for around 20 minutes. It actually ended up being more like 45. And then, of course, they went to see the beehives in the garden which Melania had constructed, which looks like a small version of the White House, and they spent another 20 minutes there, which meant that the garden party happening at the British ambassador's residence was actually delayed by like a good half an hour, 45 minutes, I think, before it kicked off. So it just shows, I think, the level of interaction, the warmth that the King and the President were showing to each other.
Sounds like they're having a jolly old time.
Yeah, it was.
Scoffing sandwiches and scones and garden parties. Yeah. Nice weather for it as well, Bev and viewers. If anybody's been out today and not been checking the coverage on GB News all day, it's been a really beautiful, balmy day here, and it's perfect conditions for the King and the Queen to come here and really exercise that soft power. The big question all day on my mind is, can King Charles and indeed Camilla, can they really sort of enact that level of royal persuasion on President Trump, where they can maybe get him to calm the rhetoric perhaps against Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister? Can they really salvage the so-called special relationship? I mean, I argue now, Cameron, really, I don't think there is a special relationship, at least with this Prime Minister in charge as it stands, Keir Starmer, because as well, it's also worth thinking about. It's not just what we've heard over the past couple of months, where the President told me that Keir Starmer was Neville Chamberlain, and maybe he says something about Winston Churchill, says all sorts of stuff. Labour, and I know you won't want to get dragged into this, so I apologise, but Labour have been banging on at President Trump for well beyond even Trump's premiership when he was elected in 2024. We had Labour staffers, maybe one Labour MP, come over to Pennsylvania to campaign for Kamala Harris during the election as well. So this is the visit of the King, I argue, a culmination of all we've seen over the past couple of years in a bid to try and reset what we've seen from thus far.
Yeah, and I think reset is the correct word for it. Look, this state visit has been in the planning for a very long time, arguably actually before Starmer ended up in Downing Street and before President Trump ended up in the White House, because it was all about commemorating 250 years of the Confederation of the US. However, clearly there's been a very public spat between the President and Prime Minister Starmer. But Starmer and Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper are still wanting the King and Queen to come here to Washington, D.C. to try and repair that relationship between the two nations. And you know, the President clearly has a huge respect for the King and admiration for the King and Queen. And I was speaking to a British source here in Washington last night, and he was saying, look, Trump is a huge Anglophile. He loves Great Britain. He loves the United Kingdom, and he particularly loves the British monarchy. And that is why I think the Labour government is trying to capitalise on that, to see if we can try and start to repair that relationship. But I don't think, and you know, I've heard from several people say this, it doesn't really matter who's in the White House. It doesn't matter who's in Downing Street. It's about our two countries and also where the monarchy sits into that. Because remember, it was King Charles's fourth great-grandfather, George III, who the Americans wanted to cut ties with back in the day. So yeah, it's all that shared history.
Don't ask David Lammy where he sits in the line of succession.
No.
Little gag there to his mastermind appearance. But yes, Bev, it's been an extraordinary day. Lots still to come. It's just the starter, if you will. Talking of tea parties, it's just the starting course, the tasters, the appetisers, the main course coming tomorrow, of course, with the big speech at Congress. And by the way, the King following in his mother's footsteps. She was here, the late Queen Elizabeth, in 1991, I think it was.
Yep.
She gave, Bev, and this is interesting, just a 12-minute speech all those years ago. The King tomorrow, reportedly, various sources, the likes of Politico, suggesting his speech could be as long as 30 minutes. So I just wonder, and maybe you can shed some light on this later in the show, I wonder if he'll have something to say, and if indeed he will, maybe. I know you say he's above politics, but we have heard him talk about the Rwanda immigration policy before. He obviously, of course, delves into eco sort of zealotry. That's political at times. When are you going to reveal your inside info? Later on?
Well, I can either do it now, or if you want to reveal it later on in the show, I can do.
Let's hold it. Let's tease the viewers.
I can tell you, I can confirm the speech is 20 minutes long. I can confirm that from the Palace source. It's 20 minutes.
Go on, Bev.
Now, we were obviously we've been in the beautiful sunshine there outside the White House all day, and the King and Queen arrived. They said hello on the steps, and we've just seen the still images. We hadn't seen these. I haven't seen these until now, boys. So I want you to look at these with us as well, Cameron, because we were stood there wondering what might be going on behind the scenes. Now, this is the ambassador's residence. That's Christian Turner. How relieved are we all that it's not Peter Mandelson? Because that, my friends, is what we would have been looking at, Ben and Cameron. How different would that have been?
Can you imagine if the Epstein files were released post-state visit and we had the images of the King in the British ambassador's residence, doing small talk, drinking champagne, eating sandwiches with Peter Mandelson? Thankfully, that's not the case. We have a brilliant diplomat, Christian Turner, who is the British ambassador to the United States and hosting 600 people in the gardens of his residence.
Keir Starmer would have said he knew nothing about it and it never crossed his desk, Bev.
Yeah, but imagine how embarrassing it would have been for us all to have Peter Mandelson. But what these images really bring home for me as we look at them, I have to just double down on my disbelief. What were they thinking? What were they thinking putting Peter Mandelson in this role and knowing how high profile this job was going to be? That's what I've been thinking when I'm looking at these images. We dodged a bullet there. Nationally, didn't we, by actually the Epstein files coming out and removing him from that position before now, just to echo what you've just been saying.
Well, that's a good question for Cameron. How long ago did the Brits know or anticipate they would be sending the King over here for this visit?
I think a very long time. They certainly look, there's a committee in the Foreign Office, if you want to get technical about it, who looks ahead at various different dates in the diary and thinks, oh, where is going to be good to send a member of the royal family abroad to represent Great Britain? They obviously knew that the 250th anniversary was coming up. Queen Elizabeth II was here for the 200th anniversary in 1976. So that's where the seed was planted in their mind that they're going to perhaps send the King over to visit the White House for a state visit. Whether Mandelson was in the job before or after that as the former UK ambassador to the US, I'm not so sure, but clearly there was a time where it would have been possible that Peter Mandelson was in post, but he's not. But the other headache with the Epstein files, I must just say, is because of the release of the Epstein files, that led to the King's brother, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, being arrested. Of course, he denies all the allegations against him, but it's also led to further calls, even this week here in Washington, D.C., for survivors of Jeffrey Epstein wanting to meet with King Charles while he is here. Now, royal sources say he's unable to do that for legal reasons. That excuse has not gone down well with the survivors, and even Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna has also said that excuse just doesn't wash with him. So let's see if there's some kind of something that the Queen could potentially do, who does a lot of work with those victims of or survivors of domestic abuse and sexual abuse more broadly, but I don't think I'm going to be seeing the Epstein survivors.
Makes you realise, doesn't it? And Niall Gardner, let me bring you in while we're talking to Ben and Cameron there as well down at the White House. It makes you realise this role of ambassador is not a behind-the-scenes job. It's not like any other civil service job. It's not like any other ambassadorship, really. This is the highest profile ambassadorship in the world, and Keir Starmer gave it to a man connected to the Epstein files, which is the issue that follows that man around all the time, and it's the one that he wants to shake off.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the whole Mandelson appointment was a monumental disgrace. And the scandal certainly is big enough to bring down the Prime Minister. I expect ultimately it is going to bring down the Prime Minister. And the role of British ambassador to Washington is incredibly important. It's second only to the position of Foreign Secretary in terms of Foreign Office appointments, and the fact that Mandelson, with his long track record of multiple scandals, was appointed is a spectacular lack of judgment, of course, by the Prime Minister. And also the key question is whether he misled Parliament over it, and I think he did.
Yeah. Let's not dwell on Mandelson too much tonight, because I'm sure our viewers at home are sick of hearing that name. But Laurie, as we look at these images here, these are two countries with a long, proud tradition and connection. Will this be a successful trip to help build that bond back?
I hope so. I pray for peace, and I hope that they can add more to the United States' current endeavor into Iran, along with the Israelis, and that they can help in some sort of way to work towards peace between not just the country, but the two countries, but across the Middle East, and come to some sort of arrangement that benefits everybody, that we can go back to this like working global order. But there's a lot of intrigue from back to these photos and images and videos. There's always, for me and all of my friends when I was growing up, there's so much intrigue around the royals. Not as much anymore for me personally, but because of all the scandals and whatnot. But
there's always been scandals with the royal family. Ben and Cameron, isn't that right? You've never had any royal generation that has avoided some sort of scandal, and isn't that part of their appeal, that they are like the doll's house, and we take them out and we use our imaginations, we project upon them our own family issues, etc., etc. What is their enduring appeal, would you say, Ben and Cameron?
Oh, I mean, just a bit, Bev. I mean, can you imagine if we had the modern media kind of machine at the time of Henry VIII, where he had 6 wives, he chopped off the head of 2 of them, divorced another 2, the scandal. And then, of course, you've got Princess Margaret, you've got Prince Harry, you've got Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, and the Duke of Windsor, of course, back in the 1930s, abdicating the throne, which led to Queen Elizabeth II becoming Queen 10, 15 years later. So there's always been scandals with the royal family, but I think it ebbs and flows, and the British public tend to love them anyway.
Wasn't Princess Anne, she was up in court, wasn't she, back in the day, for a dog gone wild? She was charged with something to do with a dangerous dog loose in Great Windsor Park. But I tell you what, Bev, looking at the royal family, I mean, it's of course, we appreciate the history, the heritage, the tradition of having them in Great Britain. It's something that nobody else really, to that extent, maybe Denmark and so on, but nobody does it like us. Regardless of their money, their fame, their fortune, their access, it's good to see, isn't it? It's like a real life episode at times of EastEnders, and it's good to see they're just human. They have everyday anxieties like us, everyday family troubles and rows. Who's coming to dinner this Christmas? You can relate to that, whether you are working class, upper class, royals. We all go through the same trials and tribulations of family life, so it's quite reassuring. For me, anyway.
Yeah, I think so too. And my kind of admiration for the royals has ebbed and flowed over the years. I'm sure a lot of people it has. When Princess Diana died, of course, like a lot of people, I had a very low opinion of the royal family at that particular point. Watching Prince Harry walk behind his mother's coffin, I had a very low opinion of the royal family at that point. I thought, how can you do that to those 2 young boys? But as I sit here in 2026, thinking about the fact that Catherine and William are the future of the royal family, and knowing how important I think actually our national identity and what distinguishes us across the world, I think the royal family sit front and centre of that. Cameron, do you? Last word before the break?
Yeah, I think you're right, Bev, and I think prime ministers come and go, and they're not really that famous around the world, are they? But a family that is completely well known is our royal family, particularly the Prince and Princess of Wales, and indeed King Charles. And I think that kind of soft power is what the King's going to wield here in the United States over the next 4 days.
Okay, well, we will be bringing you every second of that. Cameron and Ben, thank you so much for now. Still out there in the lovely temperatures of the White House. Do you think they can go and buy themselves a couple of beers to sit drinking? Are you allowed to drink beer at the White House garden, Niall, do you think?
Possibly, quite possibly.
Boys, don't do it, check. I don't want you to get kicked out. I'm just thinking, why are you sat around waiting? We have got some picnic chairs there for us because we have been sat there all day. We were sat on picnic chairs and it's been lovely. Let me know what you've been doing today, gbnews.com/your say. Let me know your thoughts on the royal visit as well. Let's have a quick break now because after the break I'm going to be also talking to a couple of guests in the studio. Greg Swenson's going to be coming in as well. Greg Swenson has been at that tea party at the ambassador's residence. Today, we're going to find out exactly what it was like from the horse's mouth. And a reminder of the breaking news as well. Details of King Charles's speech have been revealed. It's expected to last at least 20 minutes. That news was broken by our royal correspondent Cameron Walker. We'll get more of that in just a moment. Plus, we've got Adam Brooks and Sir Michael Ellis in the studio in London. Lots more. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
It's a surprise. racist?
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches.
from football to tennis, in the car,
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there. With the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as
and now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live with me, Bev Turner. We've got Ben Leo still at the White House. Of course, it's a very special few days because the King and Camilla are in town to pour oil on troubled waters over the relationship between the UK and the US. Now, we've got some details of the King's speech. He is going to be talking tomorrow at Congress, the only second monarch in history to do so. So shall we go to our panel in London this evening? Now, just a reminder, I've got former Obama policy advisor Laurie Watkins with me. We've got former advisor to Margaret Thatcher, Niall Gardner. Delighted to say that in London is businessman and activist Adam Brooks and former Attorney General Sir Michael Ellis. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us as well on this very special show from London there. Now, let me come to you first, Sir Michael. Let me tell you a little bit about what we know about the speech that King Charles is going to make tomorrow. We're hearing that it's going to involve quite a lot of reflection on the history between the UK and the US. We think he's going to say that they've not always agreed on everything, which is probably a rather polite diplomatic way of saying the two leaders of these two countries currently hate each other. And he's going to say that time and again our two countries have always found ways to come together. So what is he trying to do, Michael, in this speech?
Well, Bev, I think this is a speech that sounds like it's going to be about reconciliation. And it's interesting. I mean, this all started, this breach between the American colonies and the UK started, of course, with the Boston Tea Party. Today, we've seen tea in the Green Room at the White House, an afternoon tea garden party at the embassy. So there's a connection. But I think what this is all about is recognising that this is a diplomatic event of some considerable significance, and it's about smoothing over those troubled waters. The King is often a bridge over those troubled waters. He has been to a large extent between President Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky with Ukraine. Both of those world leaders have a great deal of admiration and respect for the king, even though they don't get on well with each other. And here we have a situation now where, despite the long arc of history between the US and the UK, the relations currently between the present head of state of the United States and the head of government, Keir Starmer, is poor. There's no doubt about that. And it's important that that is renewed, because we need to work together on such things as the Middle East, on Ukraine, on NATO, and many of these other issues. So it's about keeping a constant sense of renewal, Bev. And one of the interesting things is, this is not the first time the royals have been used to smooth over troubled waters. This has been happening for, well, frankly, for centuries. It's a little-known fact that there was an incident in 1861 called the Trent Incident, when the UK and the US, talk about fractured relations now, but the UK and the US nearly came to war in 1861 because of an issue over a British-flagged ship that had been illegally stopped in international waters by the Americans, and 2 diplomats had been kidnapped off that ship, and there was a big brouhaha about it. Lord Palmerston, the tough British Prime Minister at the time, really was ready for war with the United States. And it was Prince Albert, Queen Victoria's husband, who smoothed those troubled waters. It's been happening ever since. It happened after the Suez Crisis, 1957, when the late Queen went to the States, and there was a reconciliation then. It's happened several times over the decades and centuries. It's happening now, this week, and it's very important that it does, because there is 250 years of a relationship between our two countries that has really been a positive force in the world. And that doesn't mean to say we always need to get on, and we always have got on, but it is very important that we work together. And that, I think, is the message that the King is going to give when he addresses the joint houses of Congress tomorrow. That's a very rare honour. The Americans don't give that honour very often. It's the first time in 35 years that a British monarch has done it, 1991. Apparently, it was offered to King George VI in 1939 when they went on their state visit. But the king, who had a stammer at that time, apparently wasn't keen to do a speech in front of Congress. And so this is really special. You know, I'm reminded of something. When the king of Egypt was ousted after World War II, he said, Bev, you know, soon there'll only be 5 royal houses left. The House of Clubs, Spades, Diamonds, Hearts, and Windsor. He recognised even then that there's something special about the House of Windsor. It is above politics. It can help link people together. That's what I think is the object of this exercise.
We were just seeing the King there being met by that very glamorous, beautiful blonde lady. That's Monica Crowley. She's head of protocol here at the White House. So she organises all of these details. She knows exactly what needs to happen at every moment. In fact, I'm going to be interviewing her on Wednesday, which is as the royals will have left DC, they're going to New York, and then they fly to Bermuda as well on Thursday. So
she knows which knives and forks to use, Bev.
Oh, she does. She definitely does. And she's a lovely, very warm person. She's exactly who you'd want to greet you when you step off the plane after 7.5 hours. But Adam Brooks, your feelings on the royal family in general, and do you think that the British public still hold a place in their heart for them at this stage? And what do they represent, do you think, to us?
I can only speak from my opinion, my viewpoint. I used to sit with my late nan, say 10 years ago, with a cup of tea and some biscuits, and she loved watching the Queen, the royal events. I remember my nan grew up with me in my house, so it was a regular thing, and it's memories that I've got, and fond memories about the royal family. As I've got older, and since the Queen passed, I have no interest, no disrespect. You know, they're not the same royal family for me. I'm not a lover of King Charles. I really didn't like his rudeness during the coronation when he shooed one of the young workers away with the pen. I thought that really showed him up, showed maybe how he is behind closed doors. I'm not a lover of his wokeness. Some of the things he goes on about, you know, I think he should just be quiet and stay out of it. I don't think Trump will agree with a lot of what King Charles says in his political sphere. But one thing I do see, and I'm good at body language, is that Trump is just in awe of the royal family. He loves all things historical. He seems to... I don't think there's probably anyone in the world where he looks up to someone because of who they are. And I believe Trump does that with King Charles because he wants that legacy, the photos with him, to show how important he was in his life. That's how I see it. So, look, I think he puts aside the wokeness and maybe the leftism that does come out of King Charles' mouth sometimes. Look, this visit is... You said earlier he's representing the government. I'd say he's actually representing the people. Obviously, government represent us. I think he's there to try and smooth things over. Without Trump looking after us, Big Brother, we're in trouble. The Falklands, around the world. We can't even put one warship around the world in the Middle East. And when it did get there, it broke down. We're in trouble. We've got many years now of being sitting ducks, and that special relationship needs to be repaired, whether it's Nigel Farage in next or whoever. But one thing, Trump hates Keir Starmer. It's so obvious. He's hated him from the start. I do not believe this is going to repair the special relationship. I think it'll paper over the cracks. But as soon as King Charles leaves, it wouldn't surprise me to see an abusive tweet from Trump about Starmer or about the government again. He's going to play ball now over the next few days, definitely.
OK, thank you, Adam. Thank you so much. Let me know what you think at home. Not King Charles, President Trump is looking after us. Now, you would say that might have been a slip of the tongue. The No Kings crowd might say that wasn't entirely accidental, but it was accidental. Thank you, Adam Brooks, for reminding us, actually, that Donald Trump is doing a good job for lots of other countries, not just America. Right, still to come this evening on The Late Show Live. The man accused of opening fire at the Washington dinner on Saturday night that was attended by President Trump has been charged with attempting to assassinate the US president, and that means he could face life in prison if convicted. We're going to be getting the very latest from a Daily Mail reporter and friend of the show next. This is Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point.
Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Now, the suspect arrested at the White House Correspondents' Association dinner attack has been charged with attempting to assassinate the US president. 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen, was arrested after allegedly storming Saturday's White House Correspondents' dinner where shots were fired. According to reports, the Attorney General said Secret Service agents fired 5 shots at the suspect. They missed him, and it's possible they accidentally hit one of their own agents instead. Now, President Trump's press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, was talking today, and she was unequivocal in blaming the left-wing rhetoric from Democrats and journalists for inciting political violence.
Those who constantly falsely label and slander the president as a fascist, as a threat to democracy, and compare him to Hitler to score political points are fueling this kind of violence. The left-wing cult of hatred against the president and all of those who support him and work for him has gotten multiple people hurt and killed, and it almost did so again this weekend.
Let's get the latest from US political reporter for the Daily Mail, Victoria Churchill. Victoria, thank you so much for joining us. You were there on Saturday night. It was unsettling. But journalists are a rather hardy bunch, and those who weren't just taking the unopened bottles of wine from the table below to drink them in the bar upstairs, and there were a lot of people doing that, were filing copy very quickly to tell their publications what had happened. Your thoughts, first of all, on Saturday night, Vic, for anybody that didn't see you on GB News since then, and your reaction to what Caroline Leavitt said today about this left-wing cult of hatred.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it was definitely an event for the ages. You know, it was my first White House Correspondents' dinner. Definitely not one that I will ever forget, unfortunately for reasons that I wish were different. But, you know, my personal experience at the dinner, I was seated towards the back, so I was pretty sure that where those gunshots rung out were pretty close to where I was, just on the other side of the door. You know, as I've told folks, and I've said on this show multiple times, you know, I'm actually somebody that participates in the shooting sports, goes to gun ranges. And so, you know, where I think this is relevant to this event and this evening is that I knew right away that those were gunshots. You know, by my count, it was 3 or 4 gunshots that I heard. And then, of course, as we've all seen the footage since then, that was I guess what would have been the return fire from Secret Service agents. You know, you just named 5 shots, so if that does match up with you know, my timeline, maybe it was kind of not the first one that we heard and whatnot. And then, of course, what we did see was Secret Service did not actually hit the assailant. Which, you know, I think is interesting. Again, kind of looking at it from a little bit more of a tactical perspective, if you will. You can kind of see at one point when this guy is charging through where those magnetometers are. At one point, the agent that is closest to him has his gun pointed at him, but he has 3 agents beyond the target. And so what you're taught when you train with firearms is know your target and what's beyond it. And so in my interpretation, that is why that agent did not fire. And then it was the, I guess, the secondary agent, the line of defense, you know, the guy that you kind of saw get down lower and do that continuation of the shot. That, you know, it seems like he is probably the one that got closest to shooting the target because he was shooting, at least from the footage that I've seen, into an area where there was not further Secret Service agents.
And what do you think of what Caroline Leavitt said today in the briefing room? She called an unexpected briefing today. She went off on maternity leave on Friday. She wasn't meant to be coming back. She's due to have her baby this week, but she said she thought it was so important to come and talk to the world today after the events of Saturday, particularly to talk to the press, because of course it was all of us that were there on Saturday night. And she did not hold back, Victoria, in her criticism of left-wing commentators, politicians, agitators who she sees as playing a part in this. Do you agree?
I mean, look, I think that people can read people's words. I don't want to kind of go back and escalate this rhetoric further myself. And I know that this is something that we are all trying to do on this show, is, you know, we're trying to have civil debates, but, you know, you know who's said what. For example, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, he is one, you know, in my view, been one of the worst offenders in terms of politicians. But you really have seen politicians all up and down the country, you know, in my view, painting Republicans as the devil, as Nazis. And, you know, hopefully this is going to stop. But I think this is also what you heard after Butler and what you heard after Charlie Kirk, and it has not stopped. And so, you know, I think what I've been pointing out is that the thing that makes this different for me is that, you know, I can tell you as somebody that has done probably close to a dozen media hits, probably about half of those on GB News since, you know, about 9 o'clock Saturday night, is that the journalists were part of the story, which is not typical in our line of work. You know, we're there observing. But again, what we've seen since with the manifesto in particular is that this lunatic, if you will, if I can call him that, you know, he was there intent to harm significant numbers of people. And kind of what I've been pointing out to people that were not in attendance, and something that the cameras may not have captured too well, or people might not be paying attention to, is that, of course, you saw the principals at the top of the room, the head table, the president, Melania, the vice president, Caroline, and then as well as leaders of the Correspondents Association. But actually what you had for other cabinet officials is they were scattered throughout the room. And so, you know, kind of extrapolating beyond what did happen, if this guy had gotten into the room and he had been aiming for other cabinet members, he would have been shooting probably through people like you and I, Bev, you know, the journalists.
Yeah.
He specifically said they were not his target, but he was intent on reaching his target. And with the way that we were all interspersed, there's no way he could have aimed for people and not hit any of us. You know, at my table, there was not a cabinet secretary, but the Daily Mail, we were split across 3 tables. And so we had FBI Director Kash Patel at one of the tables with my colleagues.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a disaster was averted, Victoria, there's no doubt about it, and he was in court today. Victoria Churchill from the Daily Mail US, thank you so much for joining us on The Late Show Live. We will see you in the studio very soon, I am sure. All right, still to come this evening, Greg Swenson is going to be here. He joins me next. He was at the Ambassador's Tea Party for King Charles this afternoon. We will get all the gossip and ask whether King Charles can repair the relationship between our two countries. This is The Late Show Live with Bev Turner, only on GB News.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News,
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis in the car,
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there. With the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again.
To start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Now, I have been joined in the studio. Well, I'll tell you in a minute, because more details of the King's speech have been revealed. It's set to tell Congress the US and the UK have stood together through moments that have defined their shared history, and that our defence, intelligence and security ties are measured not in years but in decades. He's also going to refer to his time in the Royal Navy after President Trump mocked our military. Here he was last month.
We had the UK say that we'll send... This is 3 weeks ago. We'll send our aircraft carriers, which aren't the best aircraft carriers, by the way. They're toys compared to what we have. But we'll send our aircraft carrier when the war is over. I said, oh, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. Don't bother. We don't need it.
I'm joined in the studio now. I told you I'd tell you who it was. Greg Swenson's here, Chairman of Republicans Overseas. I've still got Laurie Watkins, former Obama policy advisor, in the studio with me as well. You have hot-footed it from the ambassador's residence. How was it?
Great party. I mean, surely the best British-American party I've been to since the GB News launch in September of last year. But I mean, a really great time. I think Washington is really jazzed up for the King and the Queen visiting. A lot of energy. It's hard for me to say whether it was 50% British, 50% American, but a lot of the people that were there. It was fantastic. The women looked great. The energy is super high, and everyone was in a great mood.
Yeah. And how many people were there, Greg, would you say? 500 or 600 apparently?
I would say no more than, I mean, it never seemed crowded because it was in the garden.
Yeah.
So definitely a few hundred. I don't have a head count, but we're like totally sociable. I mean, Mary Ellen met the King, shook hands,
your wife.
all good. Yes, and so it was.
Have you met the King? Did you meet the King today?
I did not meet him. I sort of let
You let the wife
I'm
do
tall,
it.
so I always stand in the back.
How very chivalrous of you. That is
Of
very
course.
chivalrous.
And I was really excited that she got to meet him. And so, no, but I was chatting with all kinds of British and American folks that were there. Warren Stevens, the ambassador to the UK, came over for the occasion. Chatted with him for a bit. I didn't speak with the British ambassador because he was escorting the King around. He was busy. So, but he's a really good guy.
And we were just reflecting on how different today would have been and how this week would have been if Peter Mandelson was still in that job. How quickly we forget what this could have looked like, Greg.
Yeah, it was only a few months ago, and it's amazing how fast the change has occurred. Christian Turner is a class act. I spent some time with him, and he hosted a fantastic party. So for his first big event, home run, absolute home run.
Well, that's good. He also had a big event on Friday night. There was a brunch on Sunday morning. Sorry, like they have been very busy in that house this weekend. after the correspondents' dinner. Laurie, let me come to you on this relationship between our two countries and what this will mean for everybody today. I mean, you know, I imagine you probably want to refer back to the Epstein files and Mandelson not being in that job. We have to thank President Trump, don't we, for having released some of the Epstein files, otherwise we wouldn't know what we were dealing with.
Yes, I'm glad that that man is gone. And every single person that's involved in this needs to be ousted, put in prison, locked up, thrown away the key, all of it. But I was just a little chuckling because I'm thinking of the Love Actually scene with Billy Bob Thornton as the U.S. president, and you had Hugh Grant as the U.K. prime minister, and we don't have that relationship at all right now. So that's just the contrast that I come to that maybe your audience finds a little bit funny. But no, I wish that things were much better than they are, and I think that that's probably why King Charles is going through this, you know, let's go through the photo albums book, like this history of how our two countries have worked so closely together, the benefit that has come, you know, the economy, global order, etc., how they've been able to really build allies amongst themselves as well, and really be true partners to the United States. I would say as much or more so than Israel, for example. That's how I used to see our relationship with Great Britain. So I hope that it can get back to those days.
Just on the events of Saturday night and this assassination attempt on the president at the White House Correspondents Association dinner, that has, in a sense, overridden what would have been the main story, which would have been that relationship between the two of them, in a sense, hasn't it? It's cast that into some sort of shade.
It's amazing how fast the world is moving right now. And I remember going back, you know, to the convention, the Republican convention in the summer of 2024. The assassination attempt was Saturday night, and on Sunday night, we're all in Milwaukee getting ready for the convention, and the president shows up the next day. Things happen quickly. I didn't feel like there was any kind of downer moment tonight because of what happened on Saturday. In fact, a lot of the people I was chatting with were at the dinner Saturday night. And so maybe if it was the next morning, difficult, but 2 days later, the energy was really high, and people were in a great mood.
And ironically, it's brought everybody together because all of the press and the president being in that room, common adversary yet again.
Absolutely.
Now with eyes on security. Did security seem very tight this afternoon?
No, it seemed adequate. I mean, obviously, security at the perimeter was very tight. Once we were inside, everyone was socializing.
It is very relaxed. That is what they get right in this city: the balance between security and informality. Quick look at your weather. Back in a minute.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Showers this morning will ease and cloud will break, leading to plenty of sunshine, but it will feel cooler compared with the last few days because of an easterly to northeasterly breeze. That breeze is going to allow the cloud to lift and break, sunshine first appearing into the east of England and then developing widely. Still some showers as we go into the afternoon across southern counties of England as well as parts of Wales, but there'll be fewer, they won't be particularly heavy, but it is going to feel cool, especially along that east coast. Temperatures in some places just 11 to 12 Celsius, and further west, a much cooler day compared with recent days, even if it does brighten up by the end of the day. Plenty of bright weather and dry weather across Scotland. Heading into the evening, still some areas of cloud here and there, especially in the north and the west, but reasonable spells of sunshine breaking through across the central belt. You can see, though, 12, 11 Celsius for Edinburgh, and for Northern Ireland 14 degrees, light winds, some bright spells going into the evening. Not feeling too unpleasant, of course, but it is going to be a fresher feel compared with recent days, and that's certainly the case across England and Wales. Still a few showers just flirting with the south coast during the evening and overnight. They become more restricted to the far southwest of England by the end of the night. Widely clear spells breaking out elsewhere. I think mostly it's a clear night because of lower humidities. We won't see as much mist and fog around, or indeed low cloud, but there'll be some patchy cloud affecting parts of the Pennines and the southern uplands, east coast of Scotland, for example, seeing a few cloud patches. Otherwise, it's a sparkling start to Wednesday. Plenty of sunshine out there, still this brisk easterly wind making it feel on the cool side, and still a few showers affecting parts of Cornwall in particular, perhaps western parts of Devon. Otherwise, warm, sunny spells for many.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis,
in the car, in the kitchen,
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dordme, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very good evening, good morning, live from Washington DC. This is Bev Turner on GB News with the stories shaping Great Britain and the United States of America. King Charles has touched down in Washington DC this afternoon. He was greeted by the President and the First Lady. They then went inside and had afternoon tea. They've been visiting the White House beehive, and the royals this evening have been hosting an evening party. This is not strictly true. I'll tell you what happened this afternoon. The ambassador there, Sir Christian Turner, and his wife hosted the King Charles and the Queen at the embassy for a whole array of the great and good of Washington DC. Now, GB News have been leading the coverage all day. Royal correspondent Cameron Walker and fellow Late Show Live star Ben Leo are at the White House there now. Ben.
Hello, Bev. Yes, they kicked off the first day in Washington, D.C. with beef sandwiches, jam, scones, and I think the King was even spotted with a cheeky, maybe G&T by the looks of it, at the ambassador's residence. Tomorrow, though, the real work starts. An address to Congress and a bit of a big feast here in the East Room at the White House in the evening.
OK, I'm Bev Turner. This is The Late Show Live. Thank you, Ben. So joining me in Washington this evening is Niall Gardner, former advisor to Margaret Thatcher, and Laurie Watkins has turned into Kinsey Schofield, I'm delighted to say.
Thank you.
For now. It's a different type of show tonight. It's a bit of a revolving door of important people, Kinsey. It's so good to see you. And we've got Adam Brooks down the line and Sir Michael Ellis as well. And Ben Leo down at the White House. So I don't know who we're going to first. Would somebody like to tell me what we're doing? It's a little bit chaotic. Apparently we're going to Ben Leo, Kinsey. Welcome to the Madhouse. Ben Leo, let me come to you first of all there. And your reflections on today, Ben, on what has been a long day here in DC, but very exciting, particularly for the Brits here, Ben.
Sorry, Bev. Sorry to be a pain. What was the question?
I was saying it's been a very exciting day for Brits in particular here in America today. It seemed to go unnoticed largely with the American press that the royals are in town, but not to the British press pack. We're very excited about it.
Of course, the King is here, but the Americans, at least, the public, not too aware of what's going on. Normally, well, I would have expected at least maybe a couple of dozen people, maybe a couple of hundred people lining the streets, you know, trying to get a glimpse of the King and Queen's car as it made its way through here to the White House. But we didn't really see any of it. But I have to say, as a Brit, seeing that the King is here, the monarch is here, and that sense of British identity and history and heritage coming here stateside, it makes me feel good as a Brit, because let's remind ourselves, America this year is celebrating 250 years of existence, the United States, which in the grand scheme of things, look, America's an amazing country. They've achieved so much. They are the hottest country in the world, as President Trump would say right now. But really, they're a relatively new nation in the grand scheme of things. And having the King here and the Queen and, of course, the big state visit, it just puts into perspective how much, as I said, history, class, tradition we have in the UK to share with the world. And it's a stark reminder, actually, that those calls we hear back in Britain from the anti-monarchy protesters and Republicans, those calling for the abolition of the monarchy, just be careful what you wish for, because I'd argue it's one of the last remaining bastions of British identity we have left in the UK, and it's something to be treasured and admired for all their faults, and they do have faults because they're human beings. But the royal family, the monarchy as an entity, is a special thing which we should treasure, and it's great seeing them here today in the United States. Bev?
Yeah, I would love to know what they were talking about here on these pictures that we're looking at, Ben, because we're used to President Trump, whenever we see him as members of the press pack here, letting us know exactly what he thinks. He never turns down an opportunity to talk to journalists. He's very transparent, he's very open. Interesting, Ben, that this meeting was closed. No press, no video. What do we make of that?
Well, I can probably guess why. I mean, could you think of a scenario where some journalist from goodness knows where, Timbuktu, comes out and says during some open press call where people can fire off questions, and you and I are familiar with it, where the president will stand there with, say, I don't know, Zelensky, Benjamin Netanyahu, and he'll open the floor to the press. Everybody will shout questions, Trump will go to somebody, and they can answer any sort of question. What's your favourite fruit, Mr. Netanyahu? Could you imagine, though, a scenario where somebody was able to ask a question with the King there present, saying something like, King Charles, why did you contribute towards your brother Prince Andrew's payoff to Virginia Giuffre? Will you be meeting the victims of the Epstein scandal? I mean, it would be hell on earth, quite frankly. So that's probably the easiest and most obvious reason why President Trump hasn't done that.
Yeah, it would be potentially a diplomatic nightmare wouldn't it, Ben? Oh, we're looking at some fresh images here. Let me bring you in, Kinsey Schofield, if I can. You're no stranger to the Royal Beat. You watch these pictures over and over again. What are your thoughts as we look at this on the first day of this state visit, Kinsey?
Well, what I will tell you is when I met the King in October, and I was incredibly nervous, and I studied up on all of the protocol. What should I call him? Do I need to curtsy? And it was my understanding that he loves when you make a mistake. So he is so tickled if you try to curtsy and you go too low, or if you wiggle a little in your high heels. I think he's in his element here. He's meeting all of these Americans that are absolutely thrilled to be in his presence. They love the tradition. They love and respect the institution and the monarchy. And I mean, it's like meeting Mick Jagger, and truly in Washington, D.C. It is like meeting Mick Jagger when King Charles walks in. You look at all of the faces at the garden party, and everyone is just so smitten with him. And I know we're talking about the important job and responsibility he has here, and that's truly to mediate a difficult scenario between Prime Minister Starmer and President Trump. But this is, I think, a really important moment in his legacy. He's showing us who he is, what he's capable of doing, and he's got a fan club to back it up, which I think visually looks incredible for him and the monarchy.
And Camilla I think she's beautiful today, actually, and she's got this brooch on which has some historical significance. I'd need Cameron Walker here to remind me of the significance of it. Do either of you know, Kensley?
This is my
Niall Gardner, what's your knowledge of brooches like?
Not immaculate.
No, I can believe it.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me, actually. So we think this is at the embassy today, at the British Embassy. We don't know what they're looking at here. It looks like some sort of pictures on the desk that they're having a look at. But Kinsey, in terms of the American audience here, how do they feel about Charles and Camilla? Because I would have thought to most Americans, if you say the Queen, they still think of the late Queen Elizabeth. A lot of Brits do as well, to be fair.
I want to be 100% positive, but unfortunately, I have had some people say, is Camilla coming too? And there's a little bit, and unfortunately in the United States of America, there is a ghost that still haunts this brand, and it's the ghost of Diana. And I think if we were looking at William and Catherine here, that we would be seeing a different response. People do love King Charles here, but I think that he still has some difficulty with the older generations that were really glued into the 90s tabloids when it comes to their perception about this current sovereign.
Yeah. Niall, though, when you look back at that period of time and how unpopular Prince Charles, as he then was, it is remarkable that they've managed, really by not courting the press, by being quiet, never complaining, never explaining, they have actually won over the British public in the end.
Yeah, I agree. I think the public perception of King Charles and Queen Camilla today is completely different to the public perception of a few decades ago. And not only has the British public really warmed to both, but also here in the United States, especially with the King, I think the American public are warming to the King. It may take a bit longer, I think, for the Queen, but I think the King is becoming a very popular figure among the American people, and it's very good to see that, because it's important that the British monarchy is cherished not only by the British people but also by the American people as well. After all, the Queen Elizabeth II was hugely popular in the United States. I mean, she was greatly loved by the American people.
Yeah.
And so now that we have a king who is making his presence really felt here in the United States with the state visit, I think that's hugely positive for the future of the British monarchy.
Harry, of course, is across the country, on the opposite coast at Kinsey. But obviously the relationship between the two of them is not reparable at the moment, is it?
Agree, and if that was really a concern for Prince Harry, he wouldn't be in the Ukraine challenging President Putin as well as challenging Putin and Donald Trump, President Trump. I felt like that was incredibly disrespectful and potentially dangerous.
Let me quickly go back to Ben at the White House, shall we, Ben? if you're still there, Ben Leo. We're just reflecting a little bit on events of the weekend as well. I think it's important to remind ourselves of with President Trump and that assassination attempt on his life on Saturday. How different would the mood be today, do you think, Ben, if that hadn't happened? What would we be talking about more, do you think? Has it cast a shadow over the event today?
I don't think it's cast a shadow over the events, but I do think it has kind of knocked out the controversy over the Falklands, which was a massive story on Saturday prior to that shooting incident at the Hilton. We were talking, of course, about the leaked Pentagon report suggesting that because somebody, the White House, the Pentagon, was drawing up this so-called naughty and nice list about the Iran war, nations who had helped the United States, nations who had obstructed the United States. Apparently, according to reports, of course, we all know the story, the UK was on the naughty list, probably behind the likes of Spain, and one of the punishments being mooted by the Pentagon was that the Falklands, the conversation over who actually owns the Falklands, which is the United Kingdom, of course, would be back up for grabs. So that was the big story on Saturday, and what we saw Saturday evening with the assassination attempt, excuse the pun, completely blew it out the water. So I suspect we'd still be talking about the Falklands, which was a massive story over the weekend. And the King, of course, King Charles, head of the armed forces. So that would probably be on everyone's lips here. And indeed, I guess maybe the wider Iran war, but certainly the Falklands, I think, Bev, would still be running riot right now if it wasn't for what we saw on Saturday night. But I don't think, to your second question, I don't think really, it doesn't feel like it intuitively that there's much concern with regards to safety since Saturday night. I don't think really what we saw on Saturday has much to do really with the King, aside from the security conversation, which, as we understand, there were 11th hour conversations between Buckingham Palace and security services here in the United States. I think they've upped the ante a little bit since Saturday, security-wise. But aside from that, I don't think it's really cast much of a shadow over this 4-day visit, Bev.
No, I think you're right, Ben. And actually, Niall, Ben, we'll let you go now, but for now. But now the issue, of course, of security is always absolutely paramount on a week like this. They have an interesting approach, I always think, in this town to security, which is that it's taken very seriously, but it's also quite pragmatic and sometimes strangely informal. And partly I mean by that, they don't have a big technological security ring around this city. You don't need a QR code. You don't have your facial recognition in DC to a lot of these occasions. Saturday night was literally a paper invitation. Does that matter?
You know, I think that, you know, the United States, the presidency is very open, really. Democracy is very open, and it's very different in Europe. If you go to, you know, the heart of the European Union in Brussels, for example, a sort of fortified, you know, city, I do think that it's refreshing to see a very open presidency in the United States instead of a sort of fortress-style presidency. And so, in some respects, the White House Correspondents' Dinner held at the Hilton Hotel, a vast hotel downtown Washington, D.C., was a relatively easy target for a crazed, deranged, you know, far left-wing, you know, gunman in this case. But I do think the American people want to see open democracy, an open presidency that is open to the American public, and I do think that is President Trump's approach. Now, having said that, of course, the security for the state visit incredibly high, but Washington D.C. is not a fortress city. It's not tied down by
the fact that you can go into Congress and just go and talk to any Congress person.
Exactly, and that's the great thing about American democracy. This is why America is the greatest democracy on earth. Really, it's the openness of it.
Yeah. Kinsey, when you saw events on Saturday night at the dinner, did you instantly cast your mind forward to today and what might change in relation to Charles's visit?
Absolutely. I was immediately worried about I was so grateful that the president was safe. I was so grateful that the agent that was shot is going to be okay. But I did immediately think, I wonder how this will affect the King's visit. I did talk to some of my contacts that are involved in security, and they said, you are in the safest place in the world to be. this week, not just because it's two of the most powerful and influential men on the planet meeting, the King and President Trump, but because there would be a bump to security. And I don't know if you've been out on the street today, but there are police, it feels like, at every corner.
Yeah.
I'm sensing a very big presence. And I actually was pleasantly surprised at the lack of protesters I saw. You'll remember during President Trump's state visit to Windsor, we saw projections on Windsor Castle. Clearly the Americans lack in creativity because we haven't seen anything even remotely to that effect here. So I have been pleased by the security response that I've seen so far.
We're looking at new pictures. There's Tom Daley, Olympic gold medalist diver, was obviously there today, talking to Queen Camilla. Oh, Michael Ellis, why don't you come in on this? Please tell us about the brooch that we've seen Camilla wearing.
It's actually a brooch that was given to the late Queen, Elizabeth II, when she came on a state visit in 1957. The then Mayor of New York, Mayor Wagner, gave her that brooch as a gift. It's a beautiful depiction of the US flag and the UK flag intertwined, and it's made of rubies, emeralds and diamonds. So it's a priceless brooch that dates all the way back to 1957 and the late Queen's visit that year. But I think it's really symbolic. This is where Queen Camilla actually is following on from the late Queen's footsteps, because she tends to wear items like brooches as a message that is being, in this case, depicted to emphasize unity between our two nations, Britain and America. So I think that is a bit of political messaging in the form of diamonds, rubies and emeralds.
And we're looking at the pictures here of King Charles talking to that's Caitlin Collins, the long brown hair. She's a very famous news anchor here, works for CNN. And the gentleman that she's talking to, do either of you know who that is, Niall? The tall gentleman there laughing?
I'm recognizing Martha from Fox News, who's a huge
Martha
monarchist.
McCallum, yes.
Martha McCallum in the pink as well from Fox News. There's a lot of media figures there today from actually all sides of the political spectrum, we understand, except GB News now, and you.
Yes.
So I do wonder how many other of the right-wing think tanks, like yourself, the Heritage Foundation, I wonder how many of them weren't invited today. Do you have any idea?
Yeah, you know, I think that these kinds of invitation lists are very political, and they're decided in Downing Street or the Foreign Office, and so prominent critics of dear leader Keir Starmer are not at the top of the invitation list. So that's the reality of these things, and so those who are seen to have the sharpest pens with regard to the state of Keir Starmer's sinking premiership tend to be the last on these kinds of invitations.
So much for unity. Yeah. So much for unity.
But let's not make any sort of mistake whatsoever. The people at CNN would not hesitate to call the British royal family racist and try to manipulate the history of this royal family. So look at them all drooling. There's Wolf Blitzer in the background.
Very, very well said.
Drooling over this family. But when Harry and Meghan sat on Oprah Winfrey and made those ridiculous claims, CNN was 24/7 race baiting.
Yeah, that's a really excellent point. There's massive hypocrisy, it has to be said, from some of the more liberal elements of the American media.
Yeah, let me bring in Adam Brooks, because the last thing you said on this show, our inbox blew up, Adam, with everybody saying they love you and they agree with every word you say. So why don't you say something more about the hypocrisy maybe on display?
Yeah, look, that's the left-wing press, isn't it, Bev? They wouldn't have given up an invitation like this. It's something they can tell their families, but, you know, when they're writing in their columns and they're on the TV, it's everything bad about the royal family. Look, all I will say is whatever I say on this channel or in my writing or my media appearances is what I would say at home or down the pub. And that's why I think GB News has me on here, because I'm real. A lot of these left-wing commentators and journalists are not real at the end of the day. But look, it's a tough one. That's something to go and tell your grandkids you've been at. But when you're
Yeah.
sort of slagging them off one week and then suddenly, you know, kissing up to them the next, it's quite embarrassing, really.
Yeah, yeah, there's a certain hypocrisy about it, isn't there? There's no doubt about it, Adam, but I suppose it comes with the territory to some extent, doesn't it? If you're just joining us, we are looking at pictures from earlier today of King Charles and Queen Camilla at the British Embassy, the ambassador's residence, home now to the relatively new British ambassador to the US, Sir Christian Turner, and his wife Claire. They've hosted several events over the weekend in preparation for the state visit, but of course this was the main one today. This was the hottest ticket in town to go to this event today. Various British celebrities, dignitaries, politicians, journalists, media representatives, a few faces you just saw in that crowd, including Freddie Hayward, who are regulars on The Late Show Live here in Washington, D.C. Kinsey Schofield, tomorrow we have more to come. There will be an official welcoming ceremony in the morning. There's going to be military inclusion in that as well, of the American military. It won't actually probably compare to the state visit last year where the royals hosted the president at Windsor Castle, because that, just to remind ourselves, was remarkable.
Biblical.
It was.
But what I will tell you is that Trump, if you look at his home from the 90s, he loves to compete with this family.
Yes.
So he is going to go all out to an unbelievable extent. So I think it's something for us to look forward to.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It won't be quite as much wood panelling, but there will definitely be as much gold involved in the event tomorrow, and President Trump will be extremely excited about it. But talking about special events, behind the scenes in the embassy kitchen, preparations were underway this afternoon for that afternoon tea for 650 guests. The menu featured tea, sandwiches, scones, dessert. Scones or scones, Niall?
I say scones.
I say scones. Desserts, classic British flavours such as smoked salmon and British beef. Let's have a quick look.
We will be preparing an afternoon tea for 650 people. We'll be making approximately 2,500 to 3,000 individual sandwiches. The calculation is based on experience and a little bit of luck. So we're doing 4 types of sandwiches. So Scottish smoked salmon we're using, and we'll just do a very simple lemon butter, black pepper, brown bread, done. We're also doing a roast beef and horseradish sandwich. Now, not normally traditionally involved in the afternoon tea flavours. However, we do have the first imports of British beef, which I'm more than happy to use for this special occasion.
That is making us all very hungry here in the studio. Let's talk now to former chef to the royal family, Darren McGrady, aka the Royal Chef. Darren, thank you so much for joining us. Those images making us all feel very hungry there, but it looks like a classic afternoon tea, little sandwiches. Why does that kind of fare go down so well at these sorts of events?
Afternoon tea, I think, is popular, I think, all over the United States. Everyone loves afternoon tea. It's quintessentially British, though. Everyone that goes to the UK from the United States wants afternoon tea, and it was fun seeing what they're preparing there. You know, even down to the cucumbers peeled lengthways, all the skin off, peeled lengthways, so there are no seeds in the cucumber sandwiches. Someone's been talking to the palace.
Wow, that's amazing attention to detail. Now, Darren, you flew over, didn't you, with the late Queen in 1991. What happened then?
Yes, I did. I was working at Buckingham Palace then. I spent 11 years with the Queen and then 4 years with Princess Diana. And we flew over to the United States. We flew on Concorde at the time, which was so cool. And then flew to Washington. The Queen spoke to Congress. She wasn't happy when she came back and joined the group, the royal group, on the tour. They gave her the podium too small, and she said it was just my hat talking. So she wasn't too chuffed with that. So Prince Charles is a bit taller, so he'll be good tomorrow. I've got every faith. And then, of course, the state banquet too. So that'll be fun. It'll be interesting to see what's being served. for the state banquet. But no, we were over there, and then we flew on to Miami, joined the Royal Britannia, sailed to Tampa. Incredible time.
And what was she like to cook for the late Queen?
The late Queen was amazing. You know, she wasn't really a foodie. You know, she ate to live rather than live to eat. She loved her favorites. She was a chocoholic, loved anything dark chocolate. Now, King Charles doesn't like chocolate, so don't expect to see anything on the menus that's got chocolate in it for him. They'd already have had the conversation with the palace about his likes and dislikes, and he loves honey, and he loves Mediterranean foods, and he loves lamb, and he loves risotto and wild mushrooms. They're the dishes that he will probably be expecting to have while he's over here. But the Queen, I spent 11 years traveling the world cooking for her, and she was amazing.
I love that. And Darren, when you were cooking for the Queen, would you have to suggest the menu to her via her people, presumably, or would they come to you and tell you what she would like?
Well, for a normal day-to-day thing, we had a menu book, a red leather menu book, and we'd write the menu in there with suggestions. And the Queen would put a line through the dishes that she didn't want, the same as King Charles today. And then if she was out for dinner, she'd put a line through the whole menu. And if she got someone like Prince William coming for afternoon tea, who also is a chocoholic and loves the chocolate cakes all the time that the Queen loved, then she'd write 2 or 3 on the menu, so we knew what was happening. But when it came to state banquets, I cooked for President Reagan, Clinton, Ford, both President Bush. And those menus had to be decided months and months and months ahead. So much planning went into them just to make sure they had all the right produce, all the right ingredients and everything.
That's amazing. And what do you think President Trump would be like to cook for? Do you wish you could cook for him?
Oh, absolutely. I've cooked for 5 US presidents. I would love to cook a banquet for President Trump. Absolutely. You know, I know that he loves his fast food. I know he loves burgers. And I know he won't be serving those at the banquet. And in fact, King Charles wouldn't like those. But I do think that it would be fun to cook a banquet. And you know, from what we've seen with President Trump, he loves the royal family. He just melts. You see this big, powerful character, especially when he's, you know, facing the prime minister and so on. But I think he melts when he sees the royal family. And, you know, whether it was Princess Diana or the late Queen, I just think that he loves that.
And I bet you could do him a posh burger, Darren. Kinsey, while you're here, I bet you'd have a question. What do you want to ask Darren as somebody that's covered the royals so deeply?
I'm sitting here trying to process the idea of Prince William loving chocolate. I love
Does that come as a revelation to you?
That's new and exciting. It reminds me of Prince Louis at Easter. Remember walking around with all those big candy things? So, Darren, what a sweet little piece of information you've given us. Thank you so much. I love this fun fact.
I cooked for Prince William for Easter, and he loved chocolate then, all the chocolate Easter eggs and everything else, and got into so much trouble. I did a hickory dickory dock, the mouse ran down the clock, and he bit the head. As a young boy, he bit the head off the mouse. Beatrice and Eugenie were in tears, and the nanny sent the chocolate egg back to the kitchen and said, "Please, can you replace the mouse in here? The girls are scared." So he loves his chocolate.
Oh, what amazing memories, Darren. Amazing memories. What was the pressure like, though, being the royal chef? Did you ever think, oh, this is too much here. I can't do the pressure is immense. If it goes wrong, my head's on the chopping block.
That's it, off to the tower. No. It was amazing because you were working with all the best ingredients, all the best produce. You know, I cooked at Sandringham, Windsor, Balmoral, Holyrood Palace, the Royal Yacht Britannia, wherever it was in the world. You know, and being on board Britannia, sailing into Miami with a huge flotilla of boats, honking horns, jetting water, the Royal Marines band on the top deck playing A Life on the Ocean Wave, and the sailors in the #1 uniform. And then there's me in the Royal Galley preparing a souffle au citron foire, a cold lemon souffle, for President Reagan, President Ford, and General Schwarzkopf that the late Queen was knighting. You know, it was just incredible experience cooking for them. And yeah, I really do. I wish I was cooking for President Trump and King Charles.
I want to bring Sir Michael Ellis in on this as well, Darren McGrady, because I'm sure Michael would have some questions for you. Michael, as you're listening to Darren McGrady there talking, aka the Royal Chef, what's occurring to you? What would you like to know about the diets and the banqueting of the royals?
Well, I'll tell you, the first thing that's occurring to me is that I'm a chocoholic myself, Bev, and and absolutely recognise that in the late Queen. I remember when she had someone come to visit her, and there were some still pictures, and you could see on the desk behind various boxes of chocolates from, you know, from Bendix Mints and Charbonnel et Walker and all the best chocolates. So I'm fascinated by that, and I think that it reminds me actually that sometimes we've talked about how clothes can be part of diplomatic language. I'm sure Chef could also tell us that food can be part of diplomatic language. Sometimes the choices that are made about what's on a menu send a signal to a guest that they're recognising what they do and where they're from, and it's a nod to their heritage. Did you ever? I just wonder whether Chef ever did that and actually used food as part of the language of diplomacy.
I think that, you know, when it came to doing banquets and visiting kings, queens, presidents from around the world for state banquets, it really was a case of showcasing British produce, indigenous product, and all the local beautiful foods that, you know, that you could expect from the UK. And then back then, when I was cooking for the late Queen, we'd have a return state banquet at Winfield House, the American ambassador's residence. And so then it was a case for the Americans to showcase their food. So I think that, you know, to see the banquet menu where you could possibly see some lamb on the menu, which King Charles grows in his Highgrove estate or rears on his Highgrove estate. But I think that, you know, America has some beautiful lamb too. So seeing that on the menu. But one fun thing with the late Queen that not everybody knew, but they probably will tonight, is that the Queen would actually have a little buzzer under the table. And so when she was bored with the guests around the table, she would just touch that, and the footman would come in and start clearing all the plates, and you'd finished even if you hadn't. The Queen was bored and it was time to move on.
Can I have one of those here at this desk, please? Unfortunately, we do have to move on, and that is an absolutely brilliant bit of knowledge. Have you ever heard that, Kinsey?
No.
Michael, have you ever heard that?
I'd not heard that. At least a trap door didn't open if that happened. You know, the guest didn't fall down into the basement or something. At least that didn't happen.
That is phenomenal. Darren McGrady, you have just informed two of the most informed royal watchers in the world here on this panel this evening. Thank you so much for your time. Absolutely fascinating. I could have spoken to you for another hour and a half. Unfortunately, we have to move on. Former chef of the royal family, Darren McGrady, aka the Royal Chef. Right, we're going to take a very quick break now, but still to come on The Late.
Our First Lady Melania is here. Look at Melania, so beautiful. Mrs. Trump, you have a glow like an expectant widow.
Donald Trump and First Lady Melania are furious after that clip. I'm going to be speaking to her advisor next, after the weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Showers this morning will ease and cloud will break, leading to plenty of sunshine, but it will feel cooler compared with the last few days because of an easterly to northeasterly breeze. That breeze is going to allow the cloud to lift and break, sunshine first appearing into the east of England and then developing widely. Still some showers as we go into the afternoon across southern counties of England as well as parts of Wales, but there'll be fewer, they won't be particularly heavy, but it is going to feel cool, especially along that east coast. Temperatures in some places just 11 to 12 Celsius. And further west, a much cooler day compared with recent days, even if it does brighten up by the end of the day. Plenty of bright weather and dry weather across Scotland. Heading into the evening, still some areas of cloud here and there, especially in the north and the west, but reasonable spells of sunshine breaking through across the central belt. You can see, though, 12, 11 Celsius for Edinburgh, and for Northern Ireland, 14 degrees, light winds, some bright spells going into the evening. Not feeling too unpleasant, of course, but it is going to be a fresher feel compared with recent days, and that's certainly the case across England and Wales. Still a few showers, just flirting with the south coast during the evening and overnight. They become more restricted to the far southwest of England by the end of the night. Widely clear spells breaking out elsewhere. I think mostly it's a clear night because of lower humidities. We won't see as much mist and fog around, or indeed low cloud, but there will be some patchy cloud affecting parts of the Pennines and the southern uplands, east coast of Scotland, for example, seeing a few cloud patches. Otherwise, it's a sparkling start to Wednesday. Plenty of sunshine out there, still this brisk easterly wind making it feel on the cool side, and still a few showers affecting parts of Cornwall in particular, perhaps western parts of Devon. Otherwise, warm, sunny spells for many.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Welcome back. Now, President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump have urged ABC to fire Jimmy Kimmel again, this time after he made a really not very pleasant joke at their expense. Have a listen.
Our First Lady Melania is here. Look at Melania, so beautiful. Mrs. Trump, you have a glow like an expectant widow.
He said you have a glow like an expectant widow. So Melania Trump slammed the host, late night host Jimmy Kimmel. She said his recent jokes, hateful and violent rhetoric, which he made just days before the White House Correspondents' Dinner. In a rare statement, the First Lady said Kimmel's comments about her family were corrosive and accused ABC of enabling him. President Donald Trump echoed the criticism, urging the network to fire Kimmel. The backlash follows a tense weekend, of course, when the shooting scare briefly disrupted the Correspondents' Dinner. Nobody was injured, of course, and a suspect is now in custody. Let me talk to the senior advisor to First Lady Melania Trump, Mark Beckman. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. And it is a really important issue. It isn't getting necessarily the attention that it deserves, but it feels like every time there is an assassination or an assassination attempt, we start to talk about this hateful rhetoric of the left. Now, this is rather unprecedented statement from the First Lady. What do you make of her desire to want to make this statement, Mark?
Look, we have the First Amendment here in the United States. Constitutionally, freedom of speech is important. But at some point, this violent, hateful rhetoric, this political discourse needs to stop. And I don't think this is a First Amendment issue. What I think this is a question of whether or not ABC and their parent company, Disney, want to be affiliated with Kimmel. This isn't the first time. This is not an isolated experience. Kimmel continues to spew hateful rhetoric over and over again, not just about the First Family, not just about Melania Trump, but about people in the cabinet and beyond. And at some point, I believe that the network has a responsibility to say, we don't want to be affiliated with this type of hateful rhetoric. And moreover, I think the advertising companies, the entities, the brands that are affiliating with Kimmel, and I could list some of them if you'd like, it's time for them to think about the affiliation too. Everything isn't about the Constitution. It's also about morals and ethics. We're not getting anywhere except towards 3 assassination attempts now with this hateful speech.
So you draw a line between the dots, in a sense, Mark, which is the hateful rhetoric, President Trump and Melania always being the punchline to the joke and have been for many, many years. And you now the equation is that equals genuine threats on their life. Are words that powerful, though, or is it the responsibility of the person that approaches them armed?
It's a good question, very fair. I don't think this is humorous. I think the fact that there have been 3 assassination attempts on the President of the United States underscores the point that there are a lot of individuals within America right now that believe everything that they're hearing from this left-leaning ecosystem. So you have leaders in the government, leaders in academia, corporate America. You have people in the entertainment industry, musicians, actors, even athletes that are all calling for violent rhetoric. They're all using mean-spirited words. And as a result, we're seeing this type of behavior over and over again. I think we're doing a real disservice as Americans by normalizing this type of behavior, by normalizing assassination attempts. We don't need to be like this. We could respectfully debate. We should have a free marketplace of ideas. But at some point, ABC needs to draw the line. Do they want to affiliate with a person like this?
When I have more left-wing commentators in the studio, let's say, they will often claim during this debate it is President Trump who sets the tone. They read his Truth Social posts. They say nobody can be more cutting and more personal than him. How are the statements from the president, would you say, Mark, different to the statements from, say, Jimmy Kimmel?
Well, it's a great question, because if you think about it, I'm also putting the mirror up to the liberals, to the Democrat Party, and I'm saying, do you want this? Do you want to live this way? So do you know that there's only been one person from the entire Democrat Party or the ecosystem of the liberals who have spoken out against Kimmel? David Axelrod. I believe David Axelrod was President Obama's former advisor as well. He's the only one. And what he said was, I like Kimmel, but he should apologize. What does it mean when you see an entire party? Oh, Fetterman also, Senator Fetterman also supported the First Lady on this. But what does it mean when you see an entire party now leaning so far to the extreme where they're supporting rhetoric like Hakeem Jeffries' rhetoric the other day, saying we're in a war now with the Republicans, and you're not seeing people move away from that? Do you know that here in the United States, the Wall Street Journal just reported today that violence from the left is at a higher pace now than political violence coming from the right. It's all being born out of the left, and it's increasing with frequency. So it's time to think about it. It's time to make some changes.
I've been waiting, actually, yesterday and today. I was there on Saturday night, and I've been waiting for more members of the left-wing media to come out and condemn what happened on Saturday night. And there's a strange silence, Mark, from those on the left to come out and say this isn't acceptable. How frustrating is that for the First Lady?
Nora, I just want to say, to your point, Nora O'Donnell's interview of the president on 60 Minutes underscores the point that you raised and that I raised. I mean, the fact that she's sitting there accusing him of being a pedophile, a baseless allegation, accusing him of this just hours after someone tried to kill him, it just shows you there's a real sickness within society. And that's what the First Lady said today. Enough is enough. Let's open our eyes, get realistic about the fact that this rhetoric is too much for our country. It's enough. We should not normalize assassination attempts of the President of the United States. It's too much.
From everybody's expressions from Saturday night of a shock and fear, the one that I keep calling to mind was the First Lady's face. This is her worst nightmare. She's had to stand by and watch her husband, who she loves very much, despite what the left-wing media would have you think. It's quite obvious when you see them off camera, the great depth of affection between them both. And it was her face that looked most shocked, as though not again. It was the heart sink moment. Something is happening again. How frightened is she, Mark?
I have to tell you that the First Lady on that evening was not frightened. She had everything under control. If you saw, she was the first one that realized what was happening in the room and quickly ducked for cover. She followed the pathway that she knew she had to take. And, fortunately, she's a strong person. She didn't get injured. She was completely safe, even by going down and crawling out of the room. She was safe. Beyond that, she understands that this role as First Lady now, unfortunately, comes with, this type of potential violence, right? She's the husband of she's the wife of President Trump, and as a result of this, it's almost like violence is inherently built into the role of First Lady. But at the end of the day, she was really very happy that everyone in that room was safe, no one was injured, and everyone was fine. She was not scared.
And what did you make? What did you make of them? I was so impressed. I don't think they got enough credit for this, going straight to the briefing room to talk to the media in the immediate aftermath. It would have been the easiest thing in the world to say, let's call it a day, let's go home and have a hot chocolate and go to bed, frankly. That could have been much worse, but they didn't do that. Instead, they went out into the White House briefing room, they spoke to the press. What do you think made them want to do that, Mark? What was the motivation?
It underscores their strength, their courage, and the fact that they're not going to back down and change the way they live because of some crazy person that wants to conduct political violence. And I think that's very admirable.
Yeah, I think so too. Mark Beckman, thank you so much for joining me. Senior Advisor to First Lady Melania Trump. Mark Beckman there. We really appreciate your time this evening. Thank you so much. Let me turn to my panel on this. Niall Gardner, this point about left-wing rhetoric. And Mark's point there about the fact that these baseless allegations, when you're talking about President Trump in the same sentence as being a paedophile, a rapist, no evidence of any of the above, no charges, no criminal,
yes.
And yet it's used as a label as though it's somehow fact. That's what does the damage.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, much of the far left today is driven by outright hatred. These are individuals so consumed by hate for the US president that some of them are willing to try and kill the president. And this is the state of America today, unfortunately, with a significant minority of left-wing extremists. Perhaps just as disturbing is the lack of condemnation coming from the leadership of the Democratic Party, really. Yeah. They are silent on what is happening here. I would say that the vast majority of political extremism right now in the United States is being driven on the left. It's not coming from the right. They're calling President Trump Adolf Hitler, and they're calling for an uprising and so on. And this is the language of violence, terrorism, intimidation, of course. And we're seeing it reflected, of course, in assassination attempts. So it's very sad to see this. But this is the reality of modern day America. And there's a real lack of leadership on the left in terms of almost zero condemnation coming from liberal leaders against what's happening here.
And I wouldn't be doing my job, Kinsey, if I didn't point out that President Trump often, as I just said there to our guest Mark, often increases the temperature around some of this debate, some of his personal attacks on people that he may have had some history with. The death recently of a judge who was part of the lawfare campaigns against him, and he said, I don't care. He basically said, I don't care that he's dead. There's a certain charm about that kind of honesty. But similarly, he doesn't always help. And maybe the hope is that if the rhetoric can get turned down on the left, he sometimes has to dial it down maybe 20% as well.
I mean, I have felt like he's dialed it down, saying you're no Winston Churchill is not, a devastating insult. But what I will say is this is why Kimmel's ratings are dying. This is why people are tuning out, because it's not based around humor or comedy. It's about, he's being so cruel and political. I don't know if being brought back so soon after the death of Charlie Kirk gave him a sense of, gave him this confidence or this arrogance. But I didn't feel like he was punished enough for the way he handled the death of Charlie Kirk.
It's a very good point, because just remind our viewers what happened there in the immediate aftermath of Charlie Kirk. He came out and said some really awful things.
He basically blamed the MAGA community for the death of Charlie Kirk, made light of the situation, tossed to a video of Trump talking about the big, beautiful ballroom. And And people were grieving.
Yeah.
Charlie Kirk was an important person to the Conservative Party, and
Yeah.
people were devastated and they were hurting. And you know, you saw people take to the streets when George Floyd was murdered, and they lit a T-Mobile on fire, and there was CNN saying there is peaceful protest happening behind me while we're watching the world burn. But when Charlie Kirk was murdered, people went to church, and you do see two very different reactions from these political parties, and there is a lot of anger, rage, and you know, just hateful behavior from the left these days. And we need to take it more seriously. Assassination attempts should not be normal in this country.
Let's go to ask Adam Brooks what he thinks about this. Adam, this idea that it's the nasty party, the Conservatives, or anybody that sits on the political right are on the wrong side of ethics and morality. We just keep seeing time and time again that old-fashioned stereotype has to just be torn up.
Yeah, look, it's the same here as it is in America. The so-called Be Kind Brigade are really not kind at all. What worries me is that a lot of this hate on the left is organised and funded by some very nefarious groups. We have groups like Antifa. I've run into Antifa in central London. I was brave enough to go up to them in their masks and call them out. Within hours, my business was trolled with fake reviews, threats to my staff. They really are mentally deranged, these leftists. You know, and it is fueled by politicians as well. Let's remember the Labour Party only a few years ago. You had Angela Rayner calling Conservatives scum. You had David Lammy calling people linked to Brexit as basically Nazis. We also had many of the cabinet ministers and senior Labour MPs call Trump racist, friends of neo-Nazi. They fueled it themselves. And now, look, a lot of them look very hypocritical and two-faced. Suddenly, when they got the power that they've craved, they want to be his friend. They want to suck up to America. I can't stand the left of politics because it is just so fake. And again, I'll say it again, there are groups, nefarious groups, that fund this sort of rhetoric and this sort of hate, and it is really sinister.
Yeah, we've seen it with the Southern Poverty Law Centre only this week being charged on multiple counts of fraud because, Michael, not only were they campaigning apparently against what they saw as a hateful rhetoric, they were funding the people who were agitating for the hateful rhetoric. You couldn't make it up, Michael.
No, it's extraordinary, Bev. And look, I thought what was said by Mr. Kimmel was rude. I thought it was unfunny and cruel. Look, speech is free in our democracies, but not necessarily free of consequences. And it's right that he should be brought to book for this. One thing I find absolutely nauseating is the hypocrisy of the left on this, because they make out as if they occupy some moral high ground and they're so righteous and holier than thou, they think that they are somehow superior to everyone because of the views that they hold. In fact, many of the times they're deranged in their hatred, and it's just not good enough.
No, it's not. And that's the statement. It's very unusual for the First Lady to come out and make a statement like that. Right, thank you all for now. Kinsey, we're going to say goodbye to you. You have a lot of royal watching to do in this town this week. Thank you so much for coming into the studio. Quick look at your weather, and we'll be right back.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Showers this morning will ease and cloud will break, leading to plenty of sunshine, but it will feel cooler compared with the last few days because of an easterly to northeasterly breeze. That breeze is going to allow the cloud to lift and break, sunshine first appearing into the east of England and then developing widely. Still some showers as we go into the afternoon across southern counties of England as well as parts of Wales, but there'll be fewer, they won't be particularly heavy, but it is going to feel cool, especially along that east coast. Temperatures in some places just 11 to 12 Celsius, and further west, a much cooler day compared with recent days, even if it does brighten up by the end of the day. Plenty of bright weather and dry weather across Scotland. heading into the evening. Still some areas of cloud here and there, especially in the north and the west, but reasonable spells of sunshine breaking through across the central belt. You can see, though, 12, 11 Celsius for Edinburgh, and for Northern Ireland, 14 degrees, light winds, some bright spells going into the evening. Not feeling too unpleasant, of course, but it is going to be a fresher feel compared with recent days, and that's certainly the case across England and Wales. Still a few showers, just flirting with the south coast during the evening and overnight. They become more restricted to the far southwest of England by the end of the night. Widely clear spells breaking out elsewhere. I think mostly it's a clear night because of lower humidities. We won't see as much mist and fog around, or indeed low cloud, but there will be some patchy cloud affecting parts of the Pennines and the southern uplands, east coast of Scotland, for example, seeing a few cloud patches. Otherwise, it's a sparkling start to Wednesday. Plenty of sunshine out there, still this brisk easterly wind making it feel on the cool side, and still a few showers affecting parts of Cornwall in particular, perhaps western parts of Devon. Otherwise, warm, sunny spells for many.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray. Are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it. Don't get us on the BBC. Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines. The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos. What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis in the car,
in the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it? We're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Live from Washington, D.C., this is GB News with the stories shaping Great Britain and the United States of America. Well, earlier today, King Charles touched down in Washington, D.C. He was greeted by the president with their respective wives, of course, looking radiant in the Washington sunshine. Then they went on and had a cup of tea inside. I'm sure the president was keen to get the kettle on when they arrived. And they've now also visited the White House beehive. We're looking at the footage here. They went down to look at Melania's new beehive in the shape of the White House. And the royals have been this evening hosting a party at the embassy with the ambassador to the US. The British ambassador, of course, Sir Christian Turner, was there as well this afternoon. GB News has been leading the coverage all day, and we will do so for the next couple of days as well. Of course, I've been joined by fellow Late Show Live star Ben Leo and royal correspondent Cameron Walker. Cameron, nice to have you in the studio.
It's lovely to be here with you, Bev. Yeah, the King's soft power very much on display today. Tomorrow, arguably the biggest test, his speech at the US Congress, the joint session of Congress, focused on reconciliation and renewal, I'm told. So stay with us.
I'm Bev Turner. That's Cameron Walker in studio. How exciting! This is the Late Show Live. So we have a packed show for you. Of course, it's a very special week here at the Late Show Live studio. We have got Cameron in the studio tonight. I've got former Obama policy advisor Laurie Watkins, or as somebody on the inbox said, that hot woman to Bev's left. Woo! I presume that's you. And in London, we have businessman and activist and part-time, I don't know, some might say adversary of Laurie Watkins, Adam Brooks. Good to see you. And also former Attorney General Sir Michael Ellis is with us this evening. Thank you all at home as well for joining us. And our very own Ben Leo has with me covering events with us today, and he's just sent us this little report.
Hello, Bev. Yes, the sun is setting here in Washington, D.C. The White House just behind me, gearing up for a big 3 days ahead. But although the sun's setting here, one person who hopes the sun won't be setting on the UK-US special relationship is King Charles. He's got a big task ahead of him, some saying it's his biggest diplomatic test yet of his reign. He'll start his tour tomorrow with a big speech in Congress, following in the footsteps of his late mother, Queen Elizabeth II. He'll speak at Congress for a rumoured 20 to 30 minutes, which could be more than double that of his mother in 1991. And I just wonder, I know we hear the rhetoric, the claims that King Charles is above politics, but we know that's not entirely accurate. He has, of course, put his head above the parapet in recent years, particularly to do with Boris Johnson, the former Prime Minister, criticising the Rwanda plan, for example. He's, of course, also a big eco-zealot, which you could argue delves into the realms of politics as well. So I just wonder, in light of what we've seen between President Trump and Keir Starmer over recent months, will he maybe say something in Congress which, although wouldn't be a direct address to that, or maybe even the Iran war, maybe a subtle hint, a subtle touch of getting involved in politics where normally he wouldn't do so. After Congress, Bev, we'll have a big banquet here in the East Room at the White House. No ballroom built yet, of course, that's currently in construction. But he'll sit down with the President, of course, the First Lady as well, and Queen Camilla for what should be a hell of a feast. And that will top off the first day of his tour here in America. GB News will be there, Bev, of course, you, me, everybody else, Cameron Walker. We've got a front row ticket to what will be a historic state visit here in America.
Thank you, Ben. Ben Leo there, as he says, we will be bringing you everything in the next few days. Let's have a quick look, shall we, at how the UK is covering events here in Washington, D.C. for the newspapers. Let's start with The Sun. This, I think, gets the best headline of the year. United King Don. Absolutely brilliant. Side by side for historic state visit, they say. The Guardian. PM pleads for unity among Labour MPs over critical Mandelson vote, and a front page picture there of the King, Camilla and Monica Crowley, the head of protocol. It says no cameras at Trump's meeting with the King. Daily Mail. Starmer's stitch-up to save his own skin, and also a lovely picture there of the royal gathering outside the White House early this afternoon. And the iPaper is going with the King's warning to America. Charles urges US President and Congress to stick with Europe. The Daily Express, the PM is putting welfare ahead of UK national security, and it says they're a good old cuppa with Trump to start King's US state visit with Charles and the President on the lawn from a little earlier today. In the Metro, Iran embassy in chilling call for martyrs. Anger as officials here ask for sacrifice. On any normal day, we'd be doing a deep dive into that. It's not exactly, though, as you would call a normal day here in America today. And the Daily Telegraph, Starmer pleads with MPs to save him. Of course, I do want to know, I would love to know whether this is a topic of conversation, whether it was today between Trump and King Charles, how much they spoke about the mess that Starmer is in. Daily Mirror, Peace Envoy. I think that's pretty good a headline as well. Talking about the fact that King Charles is here to help mend relations between our two countries amid heightened security. They say Charles arrived in the US with a message of unity. And the Times, Prime Minister battles to block Slee's vote. And of course, that is about Epstein, which does, of course, tie up with the picture and the Trump visit, because, of course, Epstein swirls around this city and this White House in a way that President Trump really would wish it would go away. And, of course, if it wasn't for the Epstein files, we would have had the ambassador hosting today, would have been Peter Mandelson. Thank goodness that did not happen. Cameron, first time you've joined me in the studio this evening. You've just come from working on some material for GB News for today. But your reflections on today, what we've seen and what we're going to see tomorrow.
Well, I think it went pretty smoothly, to be perfectly honest. All the security measures which are in place to keep the King safe appeared to work. There was no hitch, there was no protesters there. The White House was basically surrounded in this lockdown. All the streets were completely locked down, more than it would usually. Inside, we saw the president beaming, I think, when King Charles stepped out of his motorcade on the south lawn of the White House. And we were discussing earlier, weren't we? President Trump, when he's with world leaders in the White House, he feels like the top dog. This is his house. He is the president of the United States of America. He is the most important person in the room. But I think that slips, as we were discussing earlier, when it is King Charles there. His mother, as in the president's mother, absolutely adored Queen Elizabeth II. She was born in Scotland herself. So I suppose technically then the president's half Scottish in some way. So he's got this kind of sentimentality when it comes to the royal family. He describes King Charles as his friend, and that kind of soft diplomacy, that's really what the British government is going to be banking on in terms of reconciling perhaps with the United Kingdom and the United States, because there's no secret that Trump and Starmer have not got on over the last month or so, particularly following the Iran war. So we'll have to wait and see if that soft diplomacy is going to work. But what I've noticed is, and rightly so of course, all the US media this morning and throughout the day still dominated by the assassination attempt of President Trump's life on Saturday, and obviously the assailant that's now been charged with attempting to kill the President of the United States. How is the King going to galvanise the support of the American people? And I think that's going to be the key diplomatic test of that soft diplomacy.
Because very few people that we spoke to at the White House today, remarkably, were even aware that the King was in town. I found that astonishing. We were both in Caroline Levitt's briefing room today. What did you make of the briefing room for the first time being in there, by the way?
So much smaller in real life than it looks on television. It was absolutely tiny. And Bev, you were a complete trooper. You tried so hard to get Caroline to ask you a question, to answer your question on the King. The vast majority of the questions, of course, from the security situation and some other domestic policies as well. But it was amazing being in the room full of journalists, packed to the rafters. You couldn't move, really. It was like sardines. It was like being on the Northern Line on 8 o'clock in the morning in London.
She did mention, it really is, and she did mention, didn't she, at the start of the briefing, the President will be meeting the King of England. And there was a few people around the room sort of went, oh, Didn't know that was happening today. Oh, it's a major journalists who make a living covering global affairs, and it came as a surprise to them. And in fact, some of the outlets that we spoke to today, when we were coming out, they were saying, who is it here? Because they're obviously knowing that we're British. Who's in town? And we had to say it's the King and Queen Camilla. And that is because the domestic agenda here is so fast, it moves so quickly, and in fact the international agenda as well with Iran. And because this president is talking every single day to the media, often several times a day, that news agenda is quick. But I do think, Cameron, circling back on your point about how the president feels about the royal family, I think he will really enjoy a couple of days not having to necessarily think and talk about Iran, but be the host. I think he's looking forward to hosting.
Well, I think he is, and I think he really enjoys the King hosting him back in Windsor Castle back in September. And I don't think he'll want to up one on the King.
Oh, he might a little bit.
Maybe he will a little bit. We'll see. But he doesn't have a great, beautiful ballroom because it's been pause, doesn't it? So
right.
yes, it's a very small. I think it's the East Room. Ben said that the state banquet or the state dinner is going to be hosted tomorrow. But there's going to be a huge grand military display on the South Lawn tomorrow. I think it's possibly the biggest one of its kind that we've seen for a state visit. I know for a fact that the president wanted his first state visit of his second term in office to be King Charles and to be the British government. So clearly he is very excited about it. He was on very good behaviour today. It was lots of nice small talk and pleasantries. There was a bit of actually the First Lady appeared to be very cordial with the King and Queen, kissing the King on the cheek when they arrived outside the White House. Of course, very keen to show the President, show the King her new beehive in the garden. I'm not sure what we're looking at here.
Do we know what this is? Well, I was hoping you would come in and be able to illuminate us on the details. This is at the ambassador's residence today. Do we know what they're actually looking at there?
So that white pot, as it were, is a time capsule, and it's going to be buried. There's a commemorative coin. I'm not sure what the other things on the table are, but there's a commemorative coin which the King and Queen have brought over from London to put into the time capsule. It's to commemorate 250 years of the Confederation of the United States. Later on this year, it's going to be buried by the Capitol building, I think, or the Washington Monument. It's going to be buried, and with the idea that in another 250 years, so on the 500th anniversary of the United States Confederation, it will be reopened. So that's what's happening here. So that's going to be buried as a time capsule.
By all the AI robots, which will then be running the world, Cameron.
Yes.
Wow, that's extraordinary. So we don't know exactly what's in the capsule, do we? Do we know? Because there were some very strange-looking artefacts there, and I know I'm just springing this on you as we sit here. Laurie Watkins, I'll bring you in while Cameron quickly looks at the contents of the time capsule. This is Sir Christian Turner, the new ambassador for the UK to America, and his wife Claire there in the blue. He is not a gregarious figure, but he's incredibly articulate. He's very confident, he's very welcoming, he's very warm. I would say Claire, his wife, is a little bit more introverted, having met them both on a couple of occasions now, but they were very much looking forward to today. I mean, he's not been in that job 5 minutes, Laurie. Imagine not being in that house and that job for 5 minutes. You get parachuted in place of somebody that's accused of selling state secrets, potentially, allegedly, for his own gain, and you have to take one of your first events. It's a big gig.
It's huge. What a responsibility, but I think he's nailing it on all fronts because from your colleagues that I've heard, and by colleagues I mean other Brits, and I saw friends of mine, other journalists that were at White House correspondents, pre-parties and post-parties, and there was a lot going on at that embassy all weekend, since like Thursday. So brilliant that you're able to be the host with the most. Us shows that it looks like his staff and he are getting along and, off to a nice start because you really rely on the staff and the team of these people that have been there for sometimes decades at some of these residences to come in and really guide you and lead you along the way.
Very much so. And this city in particular, Washington, D.C., is built on relationships.
Yes.
Isn't it? Just explain a little bit to our audience at home why that matters so much in this town.
Sure, yes, relationships are everything. Power and money go hand in hand, and some people say you don't really have power unless you have money, or vice versa. But this city, this town is all built on how people can help one another out, how trustworthy you can be. Some people are not as trustworthy, but I think it was last year I was over at the UK embassy, and I agree with some of the people that were sharing their experiences earlier. Greg was one of them about tonight specifically, saying, when I went there, I saw so many journalists. And that stood out to me, Bev, because it showed me that the UK really takes they're very deliberate in including the media and the press here in this country, and I think that that has benefited them to much great success because they're building those relationships with people in media. At the same time, they're building diplomatic relationships, economic relationships, trade, all the things, right? But they're doing that in a way that helps communicate their message, and I think that's really important. The top people were there.
Yeah, and tomorrow, Cameron, as you say, we've got this official welcome in the morning that you and I will both be at for GB News. And then what else are we seeing on the schedule for tomorrow?
So there's going to be, excuse me, a bilateral meeting between the King and the President in the Oval Office. The King, of course, going to be addressing a joint session of US Congress as well. There's going to be a separate engagement with the Queen and the First Lady, although those details are being kept under wraps. And then, of course, we've got the state dinner in the evening. I've now found the information about what else in the time capsule.
Go on.
If you want me to go, if you want me to say
My
it.
very own little Google beside me.
So yes, so King and Queen have the opportunity to include a commemorative coin created by the Royal Mint for the occasion. The capsule will also include a proclamation from His Majesty and essays written by local Washington school children. It will be placed under the Washington Monument on the capital city's National Mall later this year to one day be reopened on the occasion of America's quincentennial anniversary, i.e. 500 years.
Fantastic. Thank you, Cameron. We just saw Scott Bessent as well there, the Treasury Secretary. There were a few cabinet ministers. I don't think there's many cabinet ministers there today. I think Scott Bessent was the key one from Trump's administration. I haven't heard any other names mentioned. Have you?
No, I think a majority of them will be at the ceremonial welcome tomorrow morning. I think that's where we'll see Trump cabinet members.
Yeah, very much so. And do we want to pivot now just to talk about this, what we were talking about politically just before we took the break and turned into the second hour, which is about this rhetoric around politics at the moment. Now, this visit will, of course, take down the temperature of some of that, because this isn't necessarily about politics, this is about relationships, as we've just been saying. But Laurie, let me come to you on this. So much criticism, today particularly, about the left, and yesterday, the left-wing rhetoric about President Trump that leads to assassinations and the significant amount of Trump derangement syndrome, as we call it, the hateful comments made about that man. I'd love to know from you, as somebody on the left, how do you reflect upon that criticism in the aftermath of Saturday night?
I don't stand by any of it on either side, and I don't think when there's one of these tragic incidents that I wish would not continue and absolutely cease to exist in this country. We have a major problem with gun violence as well. This is not just about political rhetoric. The gun is the tool to be able to carry out horrific, traumatic, and life-altering events. And that's the part that really stays with me and that I'm upset about. And what's making me even more upset is that every single day that goes by, the American public loses trust, not just in the media, in what is fact versus fiction. And everyone should be troubled by that. The fact that you cannot believe or choose not to believe what is being reported because there has been so much disinformation and misinformation in this country is very dangerous. And when people, their trust is eroding in public figures, in government officials, to give them the truth, I have a real problem with that, and I think everybody should. Like, was this a hoax? Is this staged? Is this... Aren't you troubled by that? I mean...
I am troubled by that, but I'm just thinking, you know, you've been on this show accusing President Trump of being implicated in the Epstein files in some way, as though that is just a given. I've heard you say, you know, he needs to release the Epstein files because he's, implicated, guilty. You're not the only one. Everybody, pretty much everybody that's sat on my left on this panel has at times spoken about it being a fait accompli, that he is somehow guilty in the Epstein files. Is that appropriate?
What does that have anything to do with what we were just talking about? Are you trying to take me somewhere?
No, I'm just saying that I've heard you say on this panel that
I want to see the truth, and it really burns my britches when the UK, for example, is actually doing something and holding people's feet to the fire. Why are they the only ones? And we can't do anything in this country to hold people accountable for what's happened.
But we've seen the same mistake.
Or continue with the proper investigations that they deserve. But why not?
Because we've seen the same Epstein files as you have, and the only people that we have taken down,
we have not all
if
seen
you like, the only people who've been arrested, Cameron, feel free to get involved in this, are those that were implicated in financial misconduct, because that is basically easier to prove than she said versus he said.
Yeah, well, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office, the same alleged crime as Peter Mandelson, former UK ambassador to the US. And as you say, that is the only issue. But I think you kind of touched on this. I don't know if you're talking about the gun culture, but the fact that we've had this situation where the king arrived at the airport today. The road was shut between the airport and central Washington, D.C., a massive motorcade, the kind of one that President Trump would be in. In the UK, I was with the King last week in London, in central London, at a publicised engagement. There weren't even crash barriers. The King just drove up, he got out the car, he spoke to members of the public, he shook people's hands, tourists and people alike, and then went to the engagement. Then more tourists and people were around, and he shook more people's hands. There was the odd few police officers dotted around. But my point being, he could just kind of wander around freely and talk to people, members of the public. Here in Washington, completely different story. Roads around the White House shut off. The road when the King is travelling, completely shut. Massive motorcade, and there's lots of guns in the US, not many in the UK.
Well, and I want to build on that. This president has completely shut out most of the American public. There are not White House tours anymore. That has been completely shut down. He tore down the East Wing, which is where tourists and visitors and school children and people would come to visit and learn the history of the White House complex.
But you know what,
that's gone.
But you know why he's torn that down?
The White House that is not accessible. It's not accessible like it was to all Americans or all visitors, and that's a real shame. And that includes access to the press, access to the truth, access to stories that are happening and being shut down when journalists are. They just ask a question and they're accused of being with a fake news organization.
But he's so transparent.
Like, who has derangement syndrome here?
He's so transparent. Like, and you know why he's
the least
knocked
transparent
down.
President of our time.
The least transparent.
Do you think just because he fast talks and talks crudely that's good? That means he's a truth teller? I don't think so.
I just know that he gives more face time to the world's media, unedited and uncurated, where we have the freedom to ask
under his
him
control.
anything. No, it's not under his control.
He feels that it is. He feels he's controlling the narrative and the message.
Well, on Sunday,
and he's not. His poll numbers continue to nosedive.
And his poll numbers do continue to nosedive, probably because he is so transparent with the press.
Well, why isn't Susie Wiles telling him to shut the heck up?
Because they believe in that transparency, because they believe in that freedom of speech.
You want to be right or you want to win?
Well, therein speaks the left, Adam Brooks. Do you want to be right or do you want to win? Do you want to manipulate the media and therefore possibly win an election like Biden? Do you want to close down free speech? Do you want to close down...
That's not really what that's saying.
But do you want to close down Facebook like Biden did during the pandemic? Do you want to make sure that people will be arrested for saying the wrong things like we have in the UK under the left? I think you just proved my point, Laurie, that he doesn't want to necessarily win an election more than he wants to have open, congruent dialogue with the world's media. Adam Brooks.
I thought we was going to get through this show without me and Laurie having some words, but that's changed now. What she's just said has astonished me. It's amazing that she's going on about the truth and skewing things. Look, Donald Trump, he's been accused of being a Russian spy by the left-wing press, Russiagate. They've skewed things he's said. They've made up things he said. Just look what the BBC have done in this country. So for Laurie to say that is just amazing. I can't believe it. But
so glad you're amazed.
Pardon?
I'm so
can you
glad
answer
you're
that?
amazed by what I've said tonight.
Can you answer that, Laurie? I mean, look, Russiagate, nonsense. A lot of the things that the left-wing press are attributing to Trump, absolute nonsense, but you don't call that out. Why?
And just because you say so doesn't mean that it's true, Adam. So why don't you cite the journalists and the publications that you're talking about? Because I don't know what you're talking about. For years, Donald Trump is a Russian spy. Never heard that in a credible journalist, from a journalist or a newspaper.
Apparently, he was acting for Putin. It was all over the papers for many years. They tried to get him to lose the election through all this, but no. You won't call it out, Laurie.
And you're contributing by spreading their disinformation right now on international media. So bravo, you're doing what they want you to do.
So you can't answer it.
The head of national the head of national...
I don't know what you're talking about, Adam. So I just said that 3 times.
And the fact that you don't know what he's talking about is incredibly telling, because Tulsi Gabbard...
The fact that I don't follow conspiracy theories...
Actually, no, because Tulsi Gabbard stood up...
Oh, I know what she was talking about, and it was completely false and proven by his own administration that did the investigation that there was nothing there.
Exactly. But she proved that there was nothing there in terms of him being a Russian asset in the run-up to the last election. The National Intelligence Departments here in the US did a deep dive into it. She presented all the evidence to the media in that room, and guess what? No one ran it. Tulsi Gabbard wasted all her time as the Director of National Intelligence deep dive digging into the evidence behind this and proven that there was nothing. And do you know what we heard from the left-wing media? Silence.
Well, Laurie knows that. That's why she wouldn't answer.
Bev, and I will say I've worked in media for quite some time, and especially when I have clients that I'm representing, that either strategic communications or public relations, and we all can say that we've sent out or worked on amazing campaigns that maybe didn't go anywhere, that didn't land, that didn't have the exposure or the desired result that you had hoped for, and that exactly how you just explained that was like a cry session for Tulsi Gabbard, that she did all this hard work to present this and nobody took the bait. How is that the media's fault, Bev, that they weren't interested in it? They didn't give a hoot because there's so many more important things that are going on in the world than that.
Now you're rewriting history, Laurie.
Because there were so many column inches devoted to the idea that President Trump was somehow a Russian spy.
Exactly.
And the point being that when the clarification, and if you're so preoccupied with truth, Laurie, one might presume you would want to see front pages all across the world saying, guess what? We printed a load of lies about his motive. We printed a load of lies about the fact that he was on the phone to Putin all the time. Turns out it was rubbish, and we didn't see it.
Hunter Biden's laptop. You all denied that. You said it was a conspiracy. Suddenly it was proven right. Oh, no, you don't want to report that. You're a weird sort of political expert, Laurie. You seem to forget a lot of things. What about Biden's dementia?
Weird. Okay.
What about his dementia? You all denied that. We was all saying it was clear as day. We just looked at him and heard him speak. We knew he had dementia. But no, the left wing kept defending him. Then once he's gone, he was apparently too ill to be president again. Look, you cannot rewrite history. When we're calling it out, you're silent. That is the difference.
Have you condemned, or Laurie, let me give you the opportunity now to condemn the assassination attempt on Saturday night and the manifesto from this guy, Mr. Allen, which was from the kind of left-wing textbook playbook. President Trump is a paedophile, he's a rapist, he's this, he's that. All of these ideas that he's been fed from social media, from everybody that hates the man. And I'm not saying he's perfect, and I know his delivery is incredibly problematic at times. But do you want to call out what appears to be the political agenda behind that potentially murderous act on Saturday night?
You know, you and I know each other personally, and I'm actually offended that you would think that I wouldn't, of course, condone something like that and not support something like that, Bev.
But do you see it as
I was literally on your network later that night talking about this also.
But do you see it as political violence, or do you just see it as craziness?
Do I see it as, I don't know, it just happened a couple of days ago. We all think it was craziness.
It's very clear to me that it was political violence. It's very clear to anyone
It's all
who's read
crazy.
his
None of this should be
manifesto.
happening in this country or anywhere around the world. None of this violence should be happening. All this is doing is creating division between Americans in this country. And now people around the world who want to do harm to us.
But isn't the problem, though, when you say it's all crazy, we're missing the mark. And to the First Lady's
You think this is
point,
normal behavior that this gentleman carried out? I don't think it's normal at all. But we have now become so desensitized to mass shootings or attempted mass shootings that people just literally carry on like nothing has happened. And that's wrong. That's absolutely wrong.
But isn't the immunity to these, the lack of shock, because of the likes of Jimmy Kimmel making jokes about the First Lady, saying she looks like an expectant widow, the glow of an expectant widow, a matter of days before an assassination attempt?
I don't know what we're getting into now, so I'm not following along to Jimmy Kimmel widows.
But that sort of rhetoric is precisely what is making people shrug when there's yet another attempt on a man's life. Go on, Adam.
Look, Obama was in for 8 years, I believe, wasn't he? And no crazed Republicans tried to shoot Obama. Why is that? What's the difference, Laurie?
Not one scandal Obama had either, except for wearing a tan suit. I like to just state that for the record.
No, because
one
he made a
scandal,
really...
not
no,
one.
Laurie, I'm sorry. Listen to what he said. He made a really serious point. No assassination attempts on Obama. Why?
That should be a great thing that everyone should be celebrating here around this table,
so
I would think.
it's highlighting the nuttiness of the left wing.
Assassination attempts against his life.
But why
Why aren't we applauding that?
So why do you think that happened? Why was there no assassination attempts on Obama, and yet President Trump has faced at least 3 that we know about?
I have no idea. He was a great,
it's the
great
rhetoric, isn't it,
man
Laurie?
that people respected. I don't know.
It's the rhetoric.
How would I know why people didn't want to kill? Actually, there were hundreds upon thousands of assassination messages that the FBI, just because you all don't know about them. Like when I worked on the campaigns in Florida, the things that I could tell you that we saw of nooses hanging from trees and the most disgusting, vile, abhorrent, racist things that you can ever even fathom. Houses being burned down because people were supporting Barack Obama.
But that's racism. That's different to the political...
Who cares what the crazy person's motive is for wanting to cause harm to a president, Bev?
Because it's really important that if people are
okay,
taking...
so he's a pedophile, he said. He's this, that, and the other. The guy was very clear then in his manifesto of why he was targeting Donald Trump. And you're asking me why nobody wanted to kill President Obama? What is this?
It's a conversation.
I really don't.
Oh, no, I think you really do, because you
No,
have to
I
stay
don't.
here and you do have to have this conversation.
I don't understand why you're asking me why people did not try to kill Obama.
Because what I'm saying is you're describing there is racism. That is very different to what President Trump is subject to. Racism is bad. I don't need to say that. You're not all idiots. The audience aren't idiots. I don't need to say that. Political violence, which is what is Donald Trump is repeatedly the victim of, is something that is perpetrated, created, generated by a rabid political left. That is what we're seeing. And you, as somebody that sits here as a supporter of the Democrats, deny that. You don't think it exists. You think it's on a par with the racism that
I think
Barack
your viewers
Obama
are
was
smarter than that too,
subjected
and know that I do not come on this program and support violence or think that any organization, group, I don't care which side you are on, what color you are, I don't support any of that. So let's go on the record and make that very, very clear. Laurie A. Watkins said on GB News tonight, so we can just put this to rest, please. Because I'm tired of those accusations.
Let me get a word from you.
Just because I have worked for Democrats in my life, that you all lump me into this category all the time, and it's really... It's wrong. That's the
Stop
only
denying
word for
facts
it.
then, Laurie.
And you are contributing to division and political division by trying to do what you're trying to do, Bev. And I'm not going to do it because I'm not going to be
What by saying inconvenient truths?
I'm not trying to contribute to the division. I am trying to have an honest debate about the reality of political violence in this country. And repeatedly, it seems that the political left want to stick their fingers in their ears and deny that it exists. And it will never go away until we admit the the existence of it, precisely to draw the parallel to your racism allegation. We can't call out racism. We couldn't call out racism until we accepted that it existed.
Wait, hold on.
And now we do accept
What do you
it
mean
exists.
allegation? I said that people made threats against President Obama because of color of his skin. How is that an allegation? How is that an allegation?
No, I say we can't call out accusations.
Okay, you said allegations, but yes, accusations.
We couldn't call out, historically, we could not call out racism until we accepted that it existed. And only then do you start to undermine it, the evilness of that sort of violence and criticism. What we're not seeing enough of is even an acceptance that political violence from the left wing onto the conservative, Republican, right wing, you're not even accepting that it exists. And until we accept it, we can't do anything about it. Well, let me just bring in now our guest. Sorry, I've got to bring in a guest, Adam, but it is on this theme, so don't go anywhere, everybody. We're going to carry this on because I'm joined now by former federal prosecutor John Deaton. John, you can hear our very heated debate here about the situation of Saturday evening, the assassination attempt on President Trump. And who is to blame, John? What did we learn today from the court with Alan, the character accused of this crime? What does it tell us about the temperature around political violence in this country, John?
Well, as you know, and thank you for having me, Bev, as you know, I'm running in Massachusetts. I'm the U.S. Senate Republican nominee. And let's just take my two political opponents. Ed Markey 3 weeks ago said that President Trump is a clear and present danger. And I've never been known as a Trump defender, by the way, as a clear and present danger who must be removed. And then you had Seth Moulton say that President Trump is committing murder on the high seas, and he'll soon be doing that to the people that you know here in America. He must be removed. At some point, rhetoric can constitute recruitment, and these politicians who've been there know that. Now, I'm not saying they're to blame, but complicity is on a spectrum, and they have to take accountability. Stop being provocateurs and be statesmen like you're supposed to be as an elected official in the United States of America. And anybody who denies it, listen, we have a problem of violence, political violence in the United States, whether it is Governor Shapiro and an arsonist attack, or whether it is a speaker of the state legislature in Minnesota, a Democrat who lost his life, or now 3 assassination attempts to the President of the United States. And so maybe some people could be adults in the room and dial down the temperature and take responsibility for their actions.
And what do you think about the role that President Trump does play in this, John? On Truth Social, maybe the early hours of the morning, messages come out which can be extremely surprising at times. They can be aggressive, they can be assertive, they can be funny. But does that help, and does that play into the left saying, well, if he can say that, I'm going to say it back and I'm going to say it worse?
Yeah, and certainly every statement that I just said applies to President Trump as well. And that's why I said I've not been known as a defender of President Trump. But listen, we can argue about the chicken and the egg. Oh, President Trump started it, so that gives me an excuse to not be a statesman and to engage in this level of rhetoric that is encouraging violence. There are unstable people out there. And if we look at this guy, this Allen guy, we're talking about someone who is an engineer, has a master's, teacher of the year, who has a very methodical approach to assassinate the President of the United States. And so, sure, President Trump is part of the problem of the rhetoric in this country, but I'm telling people, that doesn't give, Senator Markey an excuse to say we need to remove this clear and present danger, or Seth Moulton to say he's going to commit murder on the streets of America, we must remove him. Take responsibility for your own words, your own actions. I'm a lawyer. Words have consequences. And so, yeah, President Trump and the things he's done has contributed, but does not excuse the fact that the left has helped participate, and anyone who denies that the left is part of the problem and this rhetoric is being ignorant.
And what do we know about the charges brought today, John, against this man, and what kind of sentence he could be looking at?
Oh, yeah, so today he's been officially charged as an attempted assassination on the President of the United States. He's also charged with bringing a weapon across state lines with the intent to commit a felony, and obviously discharging. There was one shot at minimum that he got off. We don't know if it hit the Secret Service agent or that was sort of friendly fire, crossfire. We don't know the results of that yet. But those are the charges. He's facing life in prison, you know, without the ability of parole as the maximum sentence. He's not cooperating. I think the manifesto and, you know, the methodology that he took, I mean, he said he's using certain shells with the shotgun that would, you know, lower the risk of penetrating walls and hitting civilians. This was someone who had targeted the highest level of members of this administration, starting at the President of the United States. And the other thing we got to do is, like, why are these people getting so close to the President of the United States? This is the third attempt, you would think, after Butler. But then it gets us back to the fact that DHS hasn't been funded because of these members of Congress on both sides, Bev. Let me make that clear. They're the only people in America that get paid to not do their job.
Thank you, John. Great to see you. Former federal prosecutor John Deaton there. And just to explain a little bit for our British viewers, that's the Department of Homeland Security is not being funded at the moment because the government is still in a kind of shutdown because the Democrats and Republicans can't agree on the budget. Right, still to come this evening on The Late Show Live. No breaks, remember, but I'm going to be joined by someone who doesn't think that King Charles's visit to America was a good idea. After your weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Showers this morning will ease and cloud will break, leading to plenty of sunshine, but it will feel cooler compared with the last few days because of an easterly to northeasterly breeze. That breeze is going to allow the cloud to lift and break, sunshine first appearing into the east of England and then developing widely. Still some showers as we go into the afternoon across southern counties of England as well as parts of Wales, but there'll be fewer, they won't be particularly heavy, but it is going to feel cool, especially along that east coast. Temperatures in some places just 11 to 12 Celsius, and further west, a much cooler day compared with recent days, even if it does brighten up by the end of the day. Plenty of bright weather and dry weather across Scotland. Heading into the evening, still some areas of cloud here and there, especially in the north and the west, but reasonable spells of sunshine breaking through across the central. You can see, though, 12, 11 Celsius for Edinburgh, and for Northern Ireland 14 degrees, light winds, some bright spells going into the evening. Not feeling too unpleasant, of course, but it is going to be a fresher feel compared with recent days, and that's certainly the case across England and Wales. Still a few showers just flirting with the south coast during the evening and overnight. They become more restricted to the far southwest of England by the end of the night. Widely clear spells breaking out elsewhere. I think mostly it's a clear night because of lower humidities. We won't see as much mist and fog around, or indeed low cloud, but there'll be some patchy cloud affecting parts of the Pennines and the southern uplands, east coast of Scotland, for example, seeing a few cloud patches. Otherwise, it's a sparkling start to Wednesday. Plenty of sunshine out there, still this brisk easterly wind making it feel on the cool side, and still a few showers affecting parts of Cornwall in particular, perhaps western parts of Devon. Otherwise, warm, sunny spells for many.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. That was Laurie just
picking up her bottle cap.
Picking up the bottle cap. I've just had a quick swig of water and it went on the floor. Anyway, right, now, we've been talking about the royal visit, of course, for most of the show. today and the implications of that. Now, last time you were on the show with me, Niall Gardner, you went head-to-head with one of GBNews' most popular political commentators. His name is Jonathan Liss. And so Jonathan, I'm very delighted to say, is back with us now, because Jonathan, you are the only person we have found that think the King's visit to America is a bad idea. What is wrong with you? Explain your logic.
How can I be the only person that thinks that? It's just, you're required to have some balance. Here I am. I'm here to provide a vital public service, which is to express a view that I think is held by a lot of people in this country, maybe not GB News viewers, but a lot of people in the country, which is that the UK and the US have a very important relationship. No matter who is in office, clearly there needs to be a very strong partnership, whether that's political or economic, or indeed military, although we haven't seen so much of that recently. The problem is that when you have a leader like Donald Trump, who engages in routine abuse and insult and kind of mockery, humiliation, etc., there's actually very little to be gained from these kind of state occasions, because what the UK is trying to do is finding a way to get through to him, finding a way to curry favour, and it's identified correctly that the one thing that Donald Trump respects about Britain, likes about Britain, is our royal family. Because Donald Trump is not impressed by many people, but he is impressed by the king, because obviously he wants to be a king himself. Not a constitutional one like our king, but a Tudor king, but this is the closest he can get to. So the feeling goes that if we throw everything at him, which we did in the last state visit, and indeed we did under Theresa May as well in 2019, then he will look favourably upon us, give us a good trade deal, maybe stop insulting us, stop threatening us with tariffs if we object to him invading Denmark or Greenland or whatever, or Canada. And then we'll be able to engage in a normal relationship. Of course, that's not what happens. What happens is that while the king is here, or while he's over in Britain, he's polite, he's complimentary, he says everything's wonderful, and relations are good for a couple of days, except, of course, when he's insulting Sadiq Khan or whatever it might be. And then after that, it reverts to status quo ante. Everything goes back to how it was. He carries on insulting us, saying that we didn't step up during NATO in Afghanistan, saying that our Royal Navy is like a toy, saying that Prime Minister is pathetic and weak, and saying that. And all this stuff,
So your logic is, so Jonathan, your logic is, because we can't change President Trump's personality, we should just disengage. So you think there's no point having a conversation?
No, it's not what I said.
What do you think he said, Niall Gardner?
Well, Jonathan, can I explain what I said?
Good to see you, Jonathan.
Hang on. No. Go on. I think you've set your stall out quite well. I just want to see how you interpreted it, Niall.
Yeah, Jonathan. First of all, I think, Jonathan, you can handle the truth, basically, which is, of course, that Keir Starmer is pathetic and weak. And that's why Donald Trump calls Keir Starmer pathetic and weak, which is what I think most British people think as well, actually. So what Trump is saying here is actually, I think, in close coordination, actually, with what the vast majority of British people think of their own useless Prime Minister, whose latest approval rating has around 18% of the British population. So, Donald Trump just actually, I think, he just speaks the truth, really. And clearly, Jonathan, you can't handle the truth here.
You're completely missing my...
No, I'm not missing your point at all, actually.
Lovely Jack Nicholson reference there. But again, completely missing the thrust of what I'm saying. The point of all of these state occasions is to curry favour, is for transactionalism. Donald Trump has had two state visits.
It's not to curry favour, Jonathan.
And what I'm saying is it's pointless. The only thing that can result is a few days of decent headlines, and then we go back to him insulting us. There is no point in it. We're not getting any benefit out of it. And all we're doing... It's so undignified. We're bowing and scraping and getting nothing out of it.
Yeah, so you have basically you've reiterated what I think my conclusion was, that Jonathan's point is, Jonathan's point is, nothing's going to come of it, what a waste of time and money. Just give up, you can't change President Trump.
No, not give up.
I think, Jonathan, that President Trump has great respect
actually for the British monarchy, as do the vast majority of British people, and the vast majority of Americans as well actually have great respect for the British monarchy. So I think there's tremendous value in this state visit. It is, I think, an important reaffirmation, of course, of the vitally important US-UK special relationship. It's something that we should, greatly welcome on both sides of the Atlantic. And Jonathan, you should be celebrating this state visit, because I think it's great for Britain, it's great for the United States, it brings our two wonderful nations even closer together, and surely that's a very positive thing.
No, what is the practical benefit? What are the practical benefits? Are we going to see a reduction in tariffs? Are we going to see a better trade deal? Are we going to see Donald Trump not sort of denigrating our sort of hardworking armed forces, for example? What exactly are we hoping for here? Other than bowing and scraping at a leader who does not respect us.
I think Donald Trump is right to denigrate Keir Starmer and his Labour government, because
he's not right. That's not how diplomacy works.
It's full of weak-kneed appeasers, actually, Jonathan. So I think it's absolutely right to do that. But in terms of the big picture, the partnership between the United States and the United Kingdom really is the beating heart of the free world. It's unfortunate right now that we have a thoroughly cowardly, incompetent and useless socialist government in power that is humiliating Britain on the world stage, and you have a US president who's pointing out the reality of that situation. And the importance of the special relationship cannot be, I think, overestimated. It is absolutely vital to both of our nations, and thank God for the United States and Great Britain on the world stage, because our two great nations really have been at the forefront of liberty and freedom, not only for the past 70, 80 years, but for the past few centuries as well, actually. So I think it's important, Jonathan, to show real pride in the special relationship.
Let me bring in Sir Michael Ellis. I was just going to come to you, Michael, anyway. What do you make to Jonathan's point that nothing practical will come of this?
Well, we don't know yet, do we? Because we haven't seen the end result of this state visit. But can I just say that all state visits are about diplomacy. They're not all about friendship to start with and just creating better friendships between two countries. That's why Nicolae Ceausescu was invited to the United Kingdom. Excuse me. That's why that's why Robert Mugabe was invited. I'm just going to get some water.
We need to get you a glass of water. I'm so sorry, I'm hundreds of miles away, otherwise I'd be there to help you. There we go. He's had a quick swig of water. Go on, Michael.
That's why Nicolae Ceausescu, that's why Emperor Hirohito of Japan, that's why Robert Mugabe, they all had state visits from the United Kingdom. It wasn't because they were already allies as such. It was because it was about improving relations. State visits have always been more complicated than that. This is priceless diplomacy. It's soft power.
Though, is it?
It's soft power at the garden parties that you can't buy. That sort of soft power. It isn't about boardroom meetings.
I understand the point you're making, and I have made a similar. I've been on GBNews when we had the French state visit, making a similar point against a lot of guests who were saying, well, we hate the French, why are we having a state visit with the French? Obviously, you need to have engagements at all different levels. The same thing I'm arguing is that we've tried this playbook with Donald Trump before. It did not work. Theresa May literally invited him on a state visit 3 days after he became president in 2017. It did not work. She was desperate for a trade deal. All it did was humiliate her by common consensus. And then Keir Starmer invites him on his first trip as well, because he knows that dangling the baubles in front of Donald Trump is a way to get Donald Trump's attention and try to avoid some of the punishments and threats and insults that Trump routinely metes out to friend and foe alike. What I'm saying is this does not work. It does not gain us anything. We end up looking foolish and undignified and humiliated because we're bowing and scraping and frustrating ourselves in front of Donald Trump, and he gives us nothing in return.
Just in the last 25 years, we've had President Putin on a state visit to London. We've had President Xi of China on a state visit. The reason for these state visits is about It's about diplomacy. We have, between the United States and the United Kingdom, we have democratic, legal and social traditions in common, we've been the greatest alliance, frankly, in human history. And it isn't about personal relationships. I just finished. It isn't about personal relations. It isn't about between two individuals. It's about the two countries, what they represent, and the alliance between two peoples of the world, which has been one of the most secure alliances in human history.
Well, it's not secure anymore, is it?
And you have been one of my securest panels in Late Show Live history. Thank you so much, Niall, Laurie, Jonathan, Adam, Michael, Ben Leo, Cameron Walker. I will be back tomorrow, first thing in the afternoon on GB News for the State Visit.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Showers this morning will ease and cloud will break, leading to plenty of sunshine, but it will feel cooler compared with the last few days because of an easterly to northeasterly breeze. That breeze is going to allow the cloud to lift and break, sunshine first appearing into the east of England and then developing widely. Still some showers as we go into the afternoon across southern counties of England as well as parts of Wales, but there'll be fewer, they won't be particularly heavy, but it is going to feel cool, especially along that east coast. Temperatures in some places just 11 to 12 Celsius, and further west, a much cooler day compared with recent days, even if it does brighten up by the end of the day. Plenty of bright weather and dry weather across Scotland. Heading into the evening, still some areas of cloud here and there, especially in the north and the west, but reasonable spells of sunshine breaking through across the central. You can see, though, 12, 11 Celsius for Edinburgh, and for Northern Ireland 14 degrees, light winds, some bright spells going into the evening. Not feeling too unpleasant, of course, but it is going to be a fresher feel compared with recent days, and that's certainly the case across England and Wales. Still a few showers just flirting with the south coast during the evening and overnight. They become more restricted to the far southwest of England by the end of the night. Widely clear spells breaking out elsewhere. I think mostly it's a clear night because of lower humidities. We won't see as much mist and fog around, or indeed low cloud, but there will be some patchy cloud affecting parts of the Pennines and the southern uplands, east coast of Scotland, for example, seeing a few cloud patches. Otherwise, it's a sparkling start to Wednesday. Plenty of sunshine out there, still this brisk easterly wind making it feel on the cool side, and still a few showers affecting parts of Cornwall in particular, perhaps western parts of Devon. Otherwise, warm, sunny spells for many.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me. Do you trust what you're being told? Good, because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
Needs to stop. We can allow.
Politics, policy, parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters. Real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you. Bulletins on GB News,
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's 9 o'clock. I'm Alex Armstrong, standing in for Patrick tonight as he takes a well-deserved break. And breaking news in the past hour, the King and Queen have touched down in Washington, D.C. on their first day of their state visit to the United States of America. They're currently on their way to the White House to meet President Trump. Well, it's safe to say there is indeed a lot riding on this trip, isn't there? Can the King save the special relationship? Is it going to be his finest hour also tonight?
In this case, having taken advice, I've decided to allow the House to come to a view on whether the Committee of Privileges should look at the matter. It is not for me to make any decision or view.
And the Prime Minister's going to face a crunch vote tomorrow over claims he misled members of Parliament about the Manderson scandal. And ministers scramble to save the government's much-hated Troubles bill amid a massive backlash from veterans. Is it too little, too late? Plus, just 1 in 6 failed asylum seekers was deported last year. We'll be digging into all of that on this historic night here for that state visit. And joining me on the panel tonight, Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, Reform member and ex-Tory party chairman Sir Jake Berry, and former Labour Minister Bill Rammell, as well as a special guest, royal and entertainment correspondent at The Telegraph, India McTaggart. And joining us for all those expert analysis, of course, we'll have Bev and Cameron Walker in the United States too. Your Monday night is just getting started.
Very good evening to you. It's 9:05. The headlines from the GB newsroom. The King and Queen have arrived in the US, marking the start of their 4-day state visit, the first by a British monarch since 2007. Charles and Camilla were welcomed on the red carpet as they disembarked the plane. The King and Queen were given flowers by 2 young children before being greeted by the UK ambassador to the US, Sir Christian Turner, and the White House head of protocol, Monica Crowley. Charles and Camilla will now travel to Washington, D.C., where they'll be greeted at the White House by the US President and First Lady, Melania Trump, before attending a garden party. And the visit to mark 250 years of US independence will take place under tightened security after an assassination attempt on President Trump on Saturday. And the royal visit takes place against the backdrop of strained political relations between the two countries. The suspect in the White House Correspondents' Dinner attack has been charged with attempting to assassinate the US president. 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen was arrested after allegedly attacking Saturday's White House Correspondents' Dinner. Allen appeared before a federal judge at a court in Washington, D.C. His charges carry the potential sentence of life in prison. President Trump's press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, is blaming left-wing rhetoric from Democrats and journalists for the political violence.
This hateful and constant and violent rhetoric directed at President Trump day after day after day for 11 years has helped to legitimize this violence and bring us to this dark moment. Those who constantly, falsely label and slander the president as a fascist, as a threat to democracy, and compare him to Hitler to score political points are fueling this kind of violence.
Sir Keir Starmer could face a parliamentary sleaze inquiry into claims he lied to MPs over the Peter Mandelson scandal. The Commons will vote on Tuesday over whether to refer the Prime Minister to the Privileges Committee to consider if he misled the House. It follows requests from the Tory leader Kemi Badenoch and other senior MPs. Now, the Prime Minister's hinted Labour MPs will be told to reject a bid for an inquiry. He's described it as a stunt, but the Conservatives say he should face a full investigation.
The Prime Minister needs to be held to the same standards he held previous Prime Ministers to. There is no room for hypocrisy. He has sacked innocent officials to cover up his failures. He has let Parliament down. More importantly, he has let the country down.
Peers have voted in support of a social media ban for under-16s for a fourth time. A majority of 151 voted in favour of an amendment to the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill. Campaigners say Parliament has a last chance to act. Warning delays could leave children exposed to harm. But ministers insist further consultations needed before any decision is made. They will have a chance to vote again, MPs, later as part of the parliamentary ping-pong. Finally, airlines could be given new flexibility this summer to avoid disruption. Ministers are considering relaxing rules that force carriers to run near-empty flights to keep takeoff slots. It's all about fuel concerns linked to the Iran conflict. The move would allow schedules to be adjusted in advance, reducing the risk of last-minute cancellations. Those are your headlines. I'll be back with more at 10 o'clock.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Yes, breaking this evening, His Majesty King Charles III and Queen Camilla have touched down in Washington, D.C., arriving at Joint Base Andrews for their historic 4-day state visit. Well, despite the backdrop of the third assassination attempt of President Donald Trump, they still proceeded with the ceremonial motorcade procession to the White House, which the president had described as very safe. Well, any moment now, their Majesties will arrive at the White House for a private tea with President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump. Well, they will also get a tour of the White House. This, of course, is a traditional royal event with UK and US guests. We are going to bring you live images and pictures of this historic day as soon as we get them. But of course, I'm joined by my panel tonight's Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, Reform UK member Sir Jake Berry and former Labour Minister Bill Rammell, as well as the Telegraph's royal and entertainment correspondent India McTaggart. And if that wasn't enough for you, Bev and Cameron Walker will indeed be joining us throughout the show to give us the update there on the ground in Washington, D.C. I mean, what a day. What a day this is. It couldn't come at a more critical time, could it, India? This is a historic occasion because this is King Charles's first official state visit to the United States of America, and it's the first one we've had, well, since 2007, is that right?
Yes, so it's his 20th visit to the United States, but his first as monarch, which is obviously very significant. It's more of a rescue mission, or it's as much of a rescue mission of our poor relations with America right now as it is a celebratory visit of 250 years of American independence. There is a very sort of fractious political backdrop right now that the king will have to navigate with the soft diplomacy and global statesmanship that he's been practicing for many decades. But of course, we've got, you know, the aggression over the Iran war that Trump has shown towards Kiev for not taking his stance and for being reluctant to join in on the war effort. We've got the Chagos deal, we've got Falkland War sovereignty potentially now on the table. And I think that among the private discussions, there may be sort of bending of Trump's ear on certain issues, but the king knows how to do diplomacy in a way that is not sort of overt. And I think that that will be deployed. And actually, he's probably going to show really the relevancy of the royal family in this kind of soft diplomatic power, the immense power that they have have to sort of move the needle on issues like this and intense political situations like this.
Carol, it's such a critical time. It really is for our country. It can't be understated how important this is.
I mean, I've been saying for weeks, Charles is the only one who can repair the special relationship, and I have no doubt that he will. And I'd go as far as to say it's probably the most important job of his reign so far, because as India quite rightly points out, the monarchy is under attack at the moment from all sections of society. Relevant anymore? Why are we paying all this money for a royal family? And he's going to prove exactly why we're doing that, because the royal family does have soft power. The Queen personified soft power, and Charles is going to do that. And I think it's really important that he's got a lot to do. I mean, it's a really big mission for him, but I have no doubt at all that he'll do it. But I think we should also talk about, and I think it's brave of him. I mean, he was, he will take advice from people here on whether or not he should have gone, but he and Camilla have made it perfectly clear that they want to go. And the itinerary has been tweaked a little bit by the Secret Services, but not so much. But I think we should also talk here about the resilience of Donald Trump here. I know a lot of people hate Trump, and a lot of politicians here, very short-sighted Labour politicians, don't think he should go to America. It's mental, because of course he has to go.
I think the Lib Dems as well. Is that right? Lib Dems and the Greens?
I mean, it's so stupid. They want to put two fingers up at the leader of the free world. It's mad. But I think we should not, let's not underestimate the resilience of Trump here. You alluded to it before. This is the third attempt on his life, 2 in 2024 on his campaign to be president, but also the Secret Service have foiled 5 previous attempts in his 2 terms. And he just gets right back up there and says, sod it, and carries on. And I think that, you would think this might throw a shadow over the visit, but I don't think he will let that happen, Trump, because he knows this is a huge honour for the country that Charles is coming. He's already said how brave he thinks Charles is for coming. And I think he's just going to get on with it. And I think, there's a lot of prestige and power attached to the president's job, but there's also a lot of danger. 4 out of, I think it's 45 presidents have been killed during their reign. And it's happened to him attempts 5 times, and yet he goes on. And I think it says a lot. It's him saying, he's not bending to terror or intimidation, where a lot of other politicians would. He could sit in his office and hide himself away. He chooses not. He chooses to go to events where he could be assassinated. That guy last night, that maniac, was 100 yards away from him with a whole host of weapons. And today he's carrying on as normal. He's greeting the king.
And that is the backdrop of this, isn't it, for the Americans, which I think might have sensationalised this even more, because there's obviously concern at head of states in town. And Bill, I guess going back to some of the politics around this, it has been somewhat divisive on the left whether the king should go. I think the government have been quite clear they want the king to go. I think they are absolutely right. The king should go. This could be his finest hour, in my opinion. But also we've got some Labour politicians, some Liberal Democrats and the Greens saying the king shouldn't have gone. What do you make of that?
I think they're wrong. I mean, look, this visit predates Trump. There was always going to be a royal visit to coincide with the 250th celebration of the War of Independence. And I think had we turned round and said, no, the visit is not going to go ahead.
Sorry, Bill, I'm going to have to interrupt you there, because we're going to go live back to the White House there in Washington, D.C. Cameron Walker's on the ground there for us, because the king is about to arrive any moment now. Over to you, Cameron Walker. What should we expect to see?
Yeah, Alex, you're looking at live pictures of the south portico of the White House on your screens now. For those of you watching on television, we are expecting the King and Queen's motorcade to arrive in the next couple of minutes. I've actually just had some intel from outside the White House. What you'd usually expect for a state visit is kind of cheering crowds and people waving flags and all the rest of it. But the security, understandably, outside the White House is beyond intense. Tourists and members of the public blocked by extra police officers drafted in. Yellow tape has been put up. They are taking absolutely no chances when it comes to the security of the King and Queen. There's lots of very confused members of the public outside. I'm sure actually quite a lot of them, because of course, the assassination attempt on President Trump a few days ago, aren't completely aware that a state visit is taking place with the King and Queen, because the news here in the States has been dominated, understandably so, by the assassination attempt on Trump's life. Nonetheless, when King Charles and Queen Camilla, as I said, in the next couple of minutes, safely arrive inside the grounds of the White House, which we believe is happening very, very shortly indeed. They're going to be greeted by President Trump and First Lady Melania, basically the other side of the building to where I am. You can see one of the Royal Marines just stood waiting to open the door of the motorcade when it arrives, greeting them on the red carpet. There'll be a short moment for them to pose for the cameras. I doubt that the president will make any remarks to the media, but he is quite an unpredictable president, isn't he? So let's wait and see if any questions are shouted. But he won't want to do anything that is going to embarrass the king. Once that official arrival has taken place, the four of them, the king, the queen, the first lady and the president, will enter the White House for a private tea before getting a tour of the White House grounds. Specifically, I am told, the beehive, which has been specially made. It basically looks like a small version, a miniature version of the White House, and Melania in particular, the First Lady, keen to show King Charles the beehives because he loves nature, doesn't he? He's got several beehives himself at the Highgrove House in Gloucestershire, so no doubt he'll be fascinated by the pollination and all of that, and making sure the flowers are growing in Washington DC parks. And that, of course, is part of the soft power that is on display here for King Charles and Queen Camilla. As India said about 10 minutes ago or so, this is his 20th visit to the United States of America, but it is his first as head of state, and that is significant because it was only his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, on the 200th anniversary of the Confederation of the United States in 1976, who clearly continued to strengthen the ties between the UK and the US.
Okay, yeah.
To address a joint session of Congress.
There, but yes, it is indeed a historic occasion, particularly that joint session of Congress that the King will address both houses there. Absolutely incredible stuff we expect to see. And Cameron, when the King arrives here with the Queen, we expect him to be greeted by the President and the First Lady, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I'm expecting the President and the First Lady to emerge from that black archway in the middle of the screen of the South Portico here very shortly indeed for the King and Queen's arrival. And then, of course, as I said, they'll be heading in for a private tea. No cameras allowed within that tea. And then we'll get a tour of the grounds of the White House. Then, of course, we've got a special reception, a garden party that's being hosted by the British ambassador here in the United States, Christian Turner, inside the British ambassador's residence. They've been posting about it, the British Embassy, a lot on social media. And Alex, this is a fun fact for you. The beef that is being prepared in the sandwiches that are going to be served to the 600 or so guests is British beef. And that is significant because the only way that is allowed to happen is post-Brexit. There has been an economic agreement between the UK and the US, which means that British beef can be imported into the United States of America, and that is being highlighted at this garden party by the King and Queen later on today. And that is basically soft power in action, isn't it? It is the King highlighting those intense discussions between the UK and the US, but something that arguably could benefit the country as a whole. So it's diplomatic ties, it's investment opportunities, it's business opportunities, it's shared culture, shared values, and of course shared defence. But of course Prime Minister Starmer, Alex, and President Trump not been on the best of terms when it comes to defence and the Iran war, have they? So let's see if the King can smooth over relations.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be a very testing time for our King, isn't it? Cameron, we will come back to you as soon as we get the arrival there of the monarch, and we will, of course, bring you those live pictures. I just want to bring it back to my panel here briefly as we talk about soft power. So, Jake, we talk about the need, of course, for the royal family more so than ever now. Is this going to be a time that, of course, of all the bad things that have happened over the last few years for the royals since the passing of the late Queen, is this a time, actually, where their fortunes might turn around?
Well, I think this visit actually shows the sort of the weakness and the ephemeral...
So Jake, I'm sorry to interrupt you. They are literally arriving right now. Cameron, back over to you as our monarch arrives at the White House.
Yes, they have indeed, Alex. Yes, you wait a long time for these kind of arrivals, and when they do come, they are sprung upon you. And yes, as you said, the King and Queen, their motorcade is just arriving at the White House. I have to apologise slightly because the screen that I can see is slightly delayed. Here we go. So I can see the King and Queen just shaking hands now with the First Lady and the president, a kiss on the cheek from First Lady Melania Trump to His Majesty the King. The four of them just posing for photographs. The King and Queen, sorry, the President even, and the King in the middle of the red carpets, flanked by the First Lady and Her Majesty the Queen. A bit of small talk between the President there and King Charles III, just posing for the cameras and the photographers who have gathered outside the south portico of the White House. They seem to be smiling. The President is beaming, actually. He looks very excited and very pleased to be seeing the King here in Washington, D.C. Of course, he absolutely adored his time at Windsor Castle back in September for that state visit. Of course, the President's had a pretty hectic weekend, but this is his time, really, to show off the best of American hospitality for His Majesty the King. And I'm delighted now to be joined by Ben Leo, who has hot-footed it from the studio back to where we are at the White House. You got blocked by security, didn't you, getting in?
Oh, we did, yes. I think we saw a car coming in with the Union flag draping off the bonnets, flanked by some limousine vans, and we were stopped from entering the normal way via the press entrance by Secret Service, so we had to walk a couple of blocks around. But yes, I assume that was the King and Queen arriving here in DC. And what a day for it, Cameron. The sun is shining, balmy temperatures, perfect conditions for a royal garden party.
Yeah, absolutely. They certainly brought the sun from London with them. The King and Queen and the President and First Lady have just entered the White House, and this is where the private tea will be taking place before the tour of the gardens and the tour of the beehive, which Melania is very excited to show His Majesty the King. And this is soft power in action, isn't it? It's going to be this is day one of a 3 or 4 day state visit here in Washington, D.C. The King and Queen also travelling to New York City on Wednesday. They're also travelling to Virginia later on this week too. But today and tomorrow is all about the White House. It's all about President Trump and him hosting the King and Queen, celebrating 250 years, Alex, of the Confederation of the United States of America and our shared history, culture and values.
What incredible scenes there to see on such a historic day for our country and such an important time as well, Cameron. How long do we expect they will spend in this private tour here, of course, as well as the tea, before they head off to the Ambassador's house residence later on this evening?
I don't think it's going to be a particularly long tea, Alex. I suspect, although we haven't been given exact timings, but I do suspect it will last around half an hour or so inside for the private tea before they get the tour of the gardens. And then I think they will be getting back into their motorcade and taken to the British Ambassador's residence for this garden party, which is going to have around 600 guests, I believe, inside. And we are expecting perhaps some very famous faces at this Ambassador's residence. Of course, it is a place really to host dignitaries from both sides of the Atlantic and highlighting those shared cultural ties. So let's see who turns up. I mean, Ben, this is clearly the first state visit of King Charles's reign being here in Washington, D.C. What do you think the American public are going to be feeling about this? Because we were getting some intel from outside the White House, and members of the public were stopped by security cordons. There was yellow tape put up. There's far more police than usual, and they were actually a bit confused about what was going on because, of course, the news here dominated by the assassination attempt.
Yes, indeed, and you can see the step up in security actually compared to normal days. Just tons of Secret Service, SWAT teams, police with machine guns, M4s, I think they are, carrying around. I mean, they look mean. Plenty of them as well. But yes, even the taxi driver today taking us down to the White House, he said, "Oh, why is it so busy in town? There's so many people here, so many Secret Service around." And I said, "Oh, well, the King is arriving." And he said, "King who?" I said, "King Charles." And he said, "Oh, I don't know who he is." So there we go.
Fair enough. Well, we've got 3 or 4 days to try and make the King more famous in the United States. So let's see if that happens. Back to you, Alex.
Yes, thank you both very much. Let's do our best here to educate the Americans that might be watching us. I'm sure they already know if they're watching GB News who the King is, indeed. Thank you, Cameron. Thank you, Ben. We'll be back with you very, very shortly. I'll pick up where we left off with you, Sir Jake. This is really, really critical for the King to smooth over so many things. We've got the Falkland Islands currently being discussed, as supposedly a leaked memo from the Pentagon suggests. We've got the stumbling over the war in Iran, which has obviously set this difficult situation between the President of the United States and the Prime Minister at odds. We've got Prince Harry meddling in US politics the other day. There's a lot going on.
Well, look, I think this shows the power of the monarchy, doesn't it? And in politics is, by its very nature, sort of ephemeral. President Trump will not be there in a few years. Keir Starmer won't be there in a few weeks, maybe. But our monarchy, whether it be King Charles or Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II or Prince William in his role of Prince of Wales, are there as a constant in sort of British life and in our relationship with the United States. I think particularly interestingly is the debate that may or may not be happening over tea. Let's hope that Donald Trump remembers to take the tea bag out before he gives the King the cup, over tea, about the Falkland Islands, because, of course, as well as head of state, His Majesty the King is head of our armed forces. 200 British service personnel died for us to retake the Falkland Islands, British sovereign territory. I think for the White House, that leaked Pentagon memo questioning Britain's sovereignty could not have happened at a worse time. I'm sure that His Majesty the King will have that in his mind, whether it's raised or not. I think he will certainly have that in his mind as head of our armed forces. Of course, we've got the very difficult situation of the Peter Mandelson scandal, the Epstein files, and Keir Starmer having to withdraw Peter Mandelson as the ambassador to the United States because of his decision to put him there in the White House. And as you say, what do you do with a problem like Harry and Meghan, who are in the United States and making their views known on politics? It's a difficult wicket for the King.
You don't do much about them, do you? That's the problem. You can't do much about them. They can speak whenever they want to, but hopefully they won't be.
So, Alex, that our King has to do this. He has to mop up Keir Starmer's mess. All the things you've just mentioned should have been tackled and taken on by the Prime Minister of our country and maybe some other officials. And yet our King is having to go and sweep up his mess because Starmer hasn't made such a dog's dinner of international relations with America. You know, our special relationship was a good relationship before Starmer got in the middle of it. And now Trump won't even talk to him. He barely speaks to him.
Well, this is the problem. You know, Carol, I think that's a complete misrepresentation. If you do a poll of people out in the country, the vast majority will say that it's Trump who's brought a wrecking ball to the special relationship. Look at the opinion polls. That's their vote. And look, I've made clear that I think the visit should go ahead, and the King, being a seasoned diplomat, I think will handle it well. But I think you can overstate the potential impact of this, because we may have a good week, a rapprochement of relations, but I've no doubt in a week or so's time, Trump will be back to lashing out at this country. You know, he's previously scandalously neglected.
Speak to our Prime Minister.
Well,
he doesn't.
That's not true, Carol. They speak on a regular basis.
How do you know that, Bill?
Because Number 10 have recorded it, and Washington have recorded it as well. But, you know, I think you can overstate the potential impact of this, because Trump will go back to lashing out. And he's not just lashing out at this country, he's lashing out at virtually every NATO member state.
All right, let me bring you back into this, India, because this private tea, this is the thing that I think is critical, because looking at the rest of the King's itinerary here, there's a lot for him to do. This might be the best opportunity he has to speak to President Trump about these critical issues. He's obviously got this tour of the White House, which, you know, Trump is very proud of the things he's done there. Of course, I'm sure he'll talk about perhaps he might take the King through the pictures of the president's past, which is one of Trump's quite good gaffes, I think, in my opinion. But this will be a time for the King perhaps to prod gently on these issues.
Yes, and I think that's sort of the key phrasing is prod gently. I don't think he will be overtly political. That's not his role. That's not the royal family's role. But do I think it will be an opportunity for him to potentially move the needle somewhat on certain issues that we've just been discussing around this table, as the King has done before on Ukraine, which he feels very strongly about, the fight for freedom in Ukraine. And he has bent Trump's ear on this before and moved the dial when it was very important to do so. And I don't know if you'll remember when he invited Zelensky for tea at Sandringham after he was borderline humiliated in the Oval Office by Trump and J.D. Vance. So I think that it will be the sort of behind closed doors opportunity for the King to sort of prod and nudge on certain things that feel strongly about.
And there's quite a very considerate thing that President of the United States has done here, which is to take him through this New South lawn, which is this, of course, this beehive we've been talking about. I know it sounds silly to talk about it.
He's tour of a beehive. I'm not quite sure how you actually have a tour of a beehive.
Well, but is that not important?
The beehive,
but it's important, isn't it? It's important because it's showing that the President of the United States is taking an interest in the King's interest, despite them actually being on different paths here when it comes to green and eco things. Trump is drill, baby, drill. The King is, you know, let's hug a tree.
Yes, and it's funny. I mean, they do have a shared friendship. It's probably not based in shared interests. It's more sort of, I think, a shared generation, similar generation. They're both boomers, both in their 70s. But I think that, as you say, it is very touching, actually, to see Trump take an interest in something he knows the King is so passionate about and try to have that common ground with him. I mean,
don't you think, India, as well, is, you know, I think the King is probably one of the only people on the planet that Trump respects
yes,
as
I think that's
total
right.
awe of.
Yes.
Agreed.
And that helps in that kind of relationship. And you would think that it might be a bit painful for Charles having to deal with Donald Trump, because it's not the kind of person he would seek out as a friend. But the two of them seem to giggle quite a lot. They seem to be laughing with each other at the banquet here, when he was here. They seem to laugh and quite like each other.
Yeah, no, and behind closed doors, we're always briefed that it is a solid friendship, and it is maybe a surprising one to onlookers in terms of maybe not shared values or anything like that. But I think, as you say, he is pretty much, yes, in the unique position that Trump actually has deference for him and for his family and for his opinion on things, which is why the royal family right now are so crucial.
It kind of is a shame, is it? Because